Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sportsballers podcast. I'm Evan Ash, joined as always by Corey Puffett and Eric Meyer. Today on the show, we're going to talk about the national championship game, college football from the other night, obviously the NFL. It's a little news out of Major League Baseball, but we will start in the association. The NBA, there's a little bit of a Woj bomb like an hour ago.
Just a small one. I mean, no good players or picks switched hands, right?
Yeah, no fat players either, obviously. So, Eric, could you break this all down for us?
I mean, there's so many moving parts. Do you really need me to break down the whole thing?
Yes.
I mean,
I do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to break down the whole thing. I'll break down the most important piece, that is James Harden has been traded to the Brooklyn Nets. We discussed this a little bit, I guess, in the offseason, which was very brief, so it's hard to even really call it that. But there was a suggestion that James Harden was interested in being traded to the Nets. Well, now it's happened after last night's game where the Rockets, got blown out by the Lakers. James Harden had a sort of testy press conference where he basically said, I've done all I can for Houston, and it didn't work, and it wasn't good enough. So, basically, that was basically another prognostication of him just saying, I want to get traded.
And all he can for Houston. He couldn't even back away from the buffet table. Like, what?
He should
start there if he's going to do all he can.
It was a profound example of lack of self-awareness, but nevertheless, he wanted out. He's wanted out the entire season. He pretty much made that clear yesterday that he basically said, I can't win with these cats. And so he's ready to bounce, and he's going to Brooklyn to play with Kevin Durant and maybe Kyrie Irving if he decides to show up to work again. I mean, he seems to be.
Kyrie's deal?
Does anybody really know?
What is his current deal?
Again, does anybody really know? I mean, he
doesn't seem like the Nets even know for sure.
It's like he's almost like back in 2015, during the 2015 season. That was LeBron's first season back with the Cavs after leaving the Heat. He took about 10 days off in January as sort of like almost like a mid-season vacation just before the All-Star break. That's kind of the nadir of the NBA season. It's right when the NBA or the NFL playoffs are going on. It's post-Christmas. It's just a couple of weeks before the All-Star game. That's when teams really start to, burn out a little bit. That obviously doesn't apply to this season because this season just started 3 weeks ago. So I'm not really sure exactly what Kyrie Irving's problem is. He seems like he needs some time off after 6 games.
He's pulling a Dennis Rodman.
Okay, but Dennis Rodman was weird. So that doesn't help.
Kyrie's weird too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But Dennis Rodman doesn't have Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson surrounding him to kind of, bring him around. He's got Kevin Durant, who's obviously a great player, and he's got a rookie head coach in Steve Nash.
I didn't say that he was as lucky as Dennis Rodman. I didn't say he has the support system that Dennis Rodman had.
Well, and the Worm also was weird and he did stuff like that, but it didn't piss you off because you knew the Worm was weird. Kyrie Irving is so pretentious about it. Like, he's above it all, and he's above you and me and everybody else. And so he basically says, I need some time off after playing a grand total of 2 weeks worth of games. Then he ends up running around, getting caught at a party with no mask on, so COVID violations and all kinds of other shenanigans to come with that, which means probably more time that he's going to be forced to miss as a result of that. It seems like he doesn't even want to play basketball anymore. And so we don't know when the hell he's going to be on the court with Durant and Harden, if ever. But assuming that at some point he decides to stop pouting or doing whatever he's doing, the three of them will be playing on the same basketball team and will be expected to win a lot of games. And frankly, I think they will win a lot of games in the regular season. But this team resembled a championship team far more before the trade than after the trade, in my opinion. We talked about this in the offseason, that these three pieces don't really work that well together. All three guys need the ball. That hasn't changed.
If anything, that issue has been exacerbated now.
Sure, and now you got three of these guys, and you've gotten rid of some of your key bench players. Karis LeVert is gone. Jared Allen is gone. Those two guys were both good enough to start on NBA playoff caliber teams because they started for the Nets last year, who made the playoffs. So those are some good players that they had coming off the bench and that were in the rotation. That's kind of the stuff you need to win a title when you've got some questionable defensive pedigree in the starting lineup. You got to have a strong bench. They kind of had that. That's kind of what was making them so intriguing as a potential East contender. I didn't think that the starting lineup was necessarily championship worthy because of the redundancy of Irving and Durant and the lack of a defensive, blueprint there. But the bench could have made up for that. Now that's gone. And all you've added is another guy that needs the ball who doesn't play defense. So this doesn't, in my opinion, improve the team that much. It just kind of adds a little bit of star power. It makes them more intriguing to watch, but being interesting on TV doesn't mean you win a championship.
All the Ets teams in New York just have a particular knack for being an unmitigated disaster, right? Like the Nets, this is going to blow up. This isn't going to work. The Jets speak for themselves, and the Mets, act like they're the Rays in terms of spending and a colossal disappointment every summer. And then Kyrie Irving specifically, he's reminding me of Ricky Williams right now. He's just a guy who has all this talent and ability and just disappeared, just went away. Is he on an island somewhere? Like what is Kyrie doing? I don't understand.
And there's some belief that this trade may have been made by the Nets because of the flakiness of Kyrie Irving, because this gives them, I guess, a backup option as a star to pair with Kevin Durant in case Irving becomes so big of a malcontent that they either have to trade him or he just straight up doesn't come to work anymore. So this could be a response to whatever the hell is going on with that guy. But I mean, that doesn't help you because you're still paying Kyrie Irving a max contract. So if he doesn't show up, that's a big hole in your roster that you can't replace this year. Maybe you can in the future, but the thing is, be honest. At this point, if you're a team that's interested in acquiring a star guard to potentially make yourself a contender, are you picking up the phone to trade for Kyrie Irving after what he pulled in Boston, after what he pulled to get out of Cleveland, and now what he's pulling with the Nets? He's unreliable. You can't account for this guy to be where he's supposed to be every other night when you play a basketball game, let alone down the road in the crucible of the playoffs. It's just not going to happen. So at that point, what's he really worth to other teams? He's worth more to the Nets to try to make him get on the court and play because they're already paying him. So they might as well try to get something out of him. Nobody else is going to jump down that rabbit hole. I don't see that happening. So this is going to be hilarious. I'm excited to see this thing explode.
Doesn't Kyrie Irving is he injury prone as well?
Yeah, he gets hurt a lot.
Being weird.
Yeah, he does have a history of injuries, and we know that Kevin Durant's coming off of a very severe injury. So, I mean, this feels very combustible, especially because right now Kevin Durant's logging a lot of minutes because Kyrie Irving isn't on the floor, and they need Kevin Durant to be Kevin Durant. And while he's clearly capable of that, he probably shouldn't be forced to do that coming off of an Achilles tear. There should be some level of let's work your way back to 82 game shape, or in this case 72 game shape beforehand, instead of just saying, hey, we're 3 weeks into a new season, you're coming off of a freshly repaired ligament in your foot, let's just have you go out there and play 40 minutes a night. That seems a little insane.
The word I was looking for is mercurial.
That's
Kyrie Irving.
That is the best word to use for him.
Now, part of this trade also includes Victor Oladipo, our boy, going down to Houston, which means he'll now have played for two teams that James Harden used to play for. He was with the Thunder previously before his stop in Indiana. Do you think Oladipo will be a good fit in Houston? I mean, he's had a really good start to the season.
I mean, sure, he's a good player. And he's going to be paired with John Wall, who is having a good start to the season given his own injury history. So I don't see why he wouldn't have a good fit next to a really good point guard. The issue is with the rest of the Rockets. they don't have much left at this point. They traded away James Harden, who's clearly their best player, and they got Victor Oladipo in return, who love Victor, but he ain't James Harden. So there's not a whole lot left as far as contention goes, and it seems likely that some of the veteran players on the Rockets might look at this situation and say, I want out too, like PJ Tucker and Eric Gordon, sort of the key pieces of that team that they had around Harden and Chris Paul back in 2018 when they almost won the title. So those guys are going to look for opportunities to go somewhere where they can contribute to a playoff team. And the Rockets don't seem like that's it. So if those guys get shipped out the door to whoever or wherever, and apparently the Nets are supposedly interested in acquiring PJ Tucker as well. I don't know how much they have left to give at this point, but we'll see. Those guys aren't going to stick around, which is going to leave Wall and Oladipo kind of by themselves on a crummy team.
Well, how old are those guys? Because are any of them at an age where they could stick it out for the long haul? I mean, you look at this trade, and the Rockets get 4 first-round picks from the Cavs, including their 2022 first-round pick from the Bucks, and they get 4 picks from the Nets.
Eric Gordon's 32, and I believe PJ Tucker's like 33. So no, they're not going to stick around and wait for the rebuild. And the problem, you said that they got a bunch of picks from the Cavs?
Yeah, they got 4 first-round picks from the Cavs and 4 Nets picks that all swapped to the Rockets. That's according to the Woj. Brooklyn is acquiring James Harden in a 3-way deal with Cleveland. Karis LeVert, Dante Exum, Rodions Kurucs, 4 first-round picks, including the Cavs' 2022 first via Bucks, and 4 Nets picks, swaps to Rockets. Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince to the Cavs.
I think that's. I understand that tweet is confusing, but I think they're only getting one of the Cavs picks. The other 3 first-round picks are from the Nets, and then they'll also do 4 other pick swaps at other points in the draft. I don't think that the Nets got away with not only doing pick swaps to get James Harden. They gave up most of the first-round picks. But the Nets figure to be a good team as long as they have Kevin Durant, which means that the draft quality of those picks is not going to be great. So there's not really much to stick around for anyway, because it's not like they're going to be picking at the top of the draft. And you mentioned the Cavs pick that they acquired from Milwaukee. Well, Milwaukee's also a really good team that's not going to be in the lottery either. So we're talking about likely 4, late first-round picks. You can't really build a contender around that unless you're an extraordinarily good team at drafting players, and nobody's that good.
Okay. Well, that's. I mean, if that's the case, that's not the best wording, because "and" does not generally mean including. But
yeah, like I agree, it was not a clear tweet. Because when you said that, I was like, that can't be right, because that wouldn't make any sense for the Cavs to give up a bunch of first round picks. They didn't get anything, or at least not much.
Interesting. Okay. Well, fair enough. Still a lot of first round picks.
Sure.
I mean, but first-round picks, I guess, in the NBA, though, I mean, you could end up with Luka Doncic or Marvin Bagley III or somebody else who sucks. It could be.
Wait.
It's such a whatever in the first round.
But Luka Doncic doesn't suck.
Well, it said Luka Doncic, space, Marvin Bagley, or somebody else who sucks.
That...
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Luka doesn't suck is the point. You could get him, or you could get Marvin Bagley.
That's not what you said.
Well, that's what I mean.
Okay.
I mean, I understood what he meant, because I know that Evan knows that Luka Doncic is great and that Marvin Bagley is not. So I understood. The draft is a crapshoot. And
our new listeners who are joining us after we got fact-checked the other day are probably thinking, here comes another fact-check for the Sportsballers.
Yeah, leave us alone, by the way. That's unnecessary. Get off my jock.
I'm surprised anybody even listens to this show.
Yeah, well,
Still
whatever.
Who even listens to this show?
You could have at least left a little say, "Hey, nice show, but here's a fact check." You just went right into the fact check. We're not even a health and wellness show, and you're giving us crap about what 5 seconds we talked about a vaccine. Leave us alone.
You just said the V word. Now they're going to fact check us again for some reason.
I didn't drop any fake facts about it, so there you go.
Or did you?
I don't think so. Never know. Apparently, last time somebody did.
Apparently.
Anyway.
I mean, the bottom line though is the Rockets got a pretty good haul for this, and I guess Kyrie, KD, and Harden play nice. I don't know what other advice to try and give.
I mean, keep the metaphorical fire extinguishers at the ready, right? Like this, it's gonna blow up.
You might want to have the actual fire extinguishers ready too, because if it doesn't blow up, it's gonna be fire in Brooklyn.
Wait, that was a joke.
Not exactly, but Eric doesn't like that, I guess.
Yeah,
You said it's gonna be fire, as in
it's gonna be lit.
lit.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
This is the worst podcast we've done.
Boo! It's terrible. Goodness gracious.
Fast check us one time and we lose our composure.
Apparently.
I didn't know we had composure.
That's probably true.
I do. I don't know about you guys.
You just told that joke. What in the world? Anyway, there was an ESPN alert today. MLB suspends all political contributions in wake of unrest at the U.S. Capitol. I mean, it's no secret that the MLB owners are a bunch of Trump people.
So does this mean that the baseball owners are not allowed to contribute to politicians, or does it mean that baseball is not accepting contributions from the government?
I think it means they're not giving out money.
Okay.
So, of course, they support all the Trump people and all the people who kiss his butt or enable him. So, it's now suddenly unpopular to support this guy. So, that happened.
Hey, we stopped supporting him long before it became cool to stop supporting him. In fact, we never even started. That's how ahead of the curve we were.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. We didn't support Trump back in 2015. know why it took till 2021
for everybody else to get on board, and not even everybody else yet. That's the crazy part.
So that's a thing. Make of that what you will. Monday night, college football national championship, number 1 Alabama 52 to number 3 Ohio State 24. It wasn't that close. The tide rolled as expected, frankly. Ohio State, they really did all they could. They just didn't have the horses. Mac Jones was just lighting it up. Najee Harris was wide open all the time. And when he wasn't, he was running over people. DeVonta Smith, I don't know how in the world you forget to cover him, but they did. And he's just wide open. I feel like the only way to really have defended DeVonta Smith was to force him to carry the Heisman Trophy with him, on every play, to slow him down just a little bit.
Maybe that would have worked. 215 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half.
Yes, at halftime.
That is bonkers.
So, Pro Football Focus tweeted this out for college football. Since 2014, there have been 9 times that a player has had 200 receiving yards in the first half of a game. A third of those are DeVonta Smith.
Oh, wow.
3 out of 9 since 2014. That is insane.
He also caught the game-winning touchdown against UGA in overtime.
Yes, he did.
He was a
freshman.
Yeah, when he was a freshman and not a Heisman winner and world famous and whatnot.
Yeah, it was. I watched that replay, or they showed that replay when they were showing the Saban montage of all the championships that he's won, and they showed that play where Tua made that throw, and I saw number 6 Smith, and I was like, "Wait a second, is that the same guy?" I didn't actually realize that it was him that caught that touchdown pass. So, kind of a nice bookend to his career at Alabama to, catch the game winner to beat Georgia, and then 3 years later dominate in the championship game Granted, got hurt in the second half early on, but
He'd done enough.
yeah.
Right.
And the team had done it. I mean, the thing is, Alabama had. You could make a case that this is the best offense in college football history. I mean, they had whatever. I don't know what the quarterback award is. He won like the Johnny Unitas award, and God knows what other awards Mac Jones did. DeVonta Smith was the Heisman winner, the Blitnikoff winner. Najee Harris is the best running back in the country. The offensive line was the best O-line in the country. I mean, they had everything lined up for them. This was an unstoppable juggernaut, and frankly, the fumble, the strip sack fumble that Mac Jones coughed up in, I think, the second quarter, that only served to make the game watchable for another few minutes, because everything that happened after that was just blowout city.
Yeah. Alabama dominated. So, went to bed early. Didn't have to stay up till 1 a.m.
One dude didn't even have to stay until the second half. Some guy on Twitter bet $200 that Smith wouldn't get 100 receiving yards in the game.
Well, there goes $200.
He could have ripped that ticket up by around 9 o'clock.
Right.
That was a terrible bet. What are you thinking, man? Like, you better have gotten some serious odds on that to make that bet.
Just write a check to the casino. Just write a check as a donation.
Just giving away your money.
Would be better.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, though. I mean, this is the nature of college football, though. I mean, you've got Ohio State, who a lot of people thought that this is the best Ohio State team in terms of talent level ever. And they go out there and they beg their way back into playing college football after the Big Ten canceled their season. They get to the playoff. They hammer Clemson. And so this looks like an absolute stud all-time team, and they just get completely boat raced by Alabama. Like, there are levels to this, and Alabama is so far ahead of everybody else. I mean, I know Clemson got them a couple of times, but that seems to be the exception and not the rule. I mean, Alabama's won half of the championships since like 2009.
Oh yeah, I mean, and there's really no hope for anybody else like coming on the horizon either. Like, they're that far ahead, and like there's no sort of competitive balance in college sports.
And there's nothing you can do about it, because all that's going to happen is like success in college sports. It perpetuates itself because you win, your players go to the NFL, so then the next group of great players want to come play for you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no stopping. There's no requirements. There's no salary cap. There's nothing to prevent Nick Saban from. I mean,
there is a salary cap. It's 0.
Sure, but everybody's got that, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, they cheat anyway. So, and then you got next year, Bryce Love, or whatever his name is, the 5-star stud quarterback, is going to come in for Alabama and be all world too. So, I mean, it's just a stupid level of talent constantly flowing through Alabama. And I think that I also looked it up. Out of this, they won 6 out of the last 12, and the 6 non-Alabama winners, 5 of them had to go through Alabama to win the trophy. Like, the only one that didn't. Florida State.
Oh.
And they went through Auburn, who went through Alabama with the kick 6. So, okay. It's either you got to find a way to beat these guys if you want to win, because you're not going to luck out and avoid them. Every other team's had to find a way to beat them to win the trophy. So, and that seems to be the case. I mean, they missed the college football playoff one time, and that was because Tua got hurt.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like the NFL where the Patriots seem like they won every year, but they kept picking last in the draft. And, that seems to finally have caught up to them. Like, they just don't have enough good players up there. So they went, 7-9, 6-10 or something this year? Like, they weren't any good at all. But, like, that's not going to happen in college football unless, like, Nick Saban retires and they hire some idiot to replace him who has no idea what he's doing. Like, that's the only way this changes.
I also find it amusing every year that people try to say that, when Bama doesn't win, like when they lost, they got blown out by Clemson 2 years ago, and people try to say, well, the Alabama dynasty's done. I'm like, that they're going to just bring another group of kids in there. They're going to be awesome, right? Mm-hmm. Like, how are they done? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why anybody would say something like that? It's not true.
Yeah, the tide always rolls. That's what
How it
we
is.
should have learned. Alrighty, on to the pros. Start with takeaways from the wild card weekend. Let's just start with the Washington football team and the Buccaneers.
That was a fun game. Ultimately disappointing with the end results being a loss. But that was a fun game as somebody who was kind of pulling for the team, who was pulling for Heineke.
Kinda. You bought all their stuff.
I bought a few shirts.
That's not kinda. When you spend money.
Those
Yeah,
things,
if you buy
they could be
the
worth
swag,
some
you're
money.
all in.
They could be worth some money at some point if they ever change their name to something that's an actual nickname.
So it'd be like St. Louis Browns merchandise.
Yeah,
Like
except
doesn't
even
exist.
cooler.
Okay.
In any case, Heineke played really well. I was incredibly impressed with his performance. The poise that he showed in and out of the pocket, his ability to extend plays when he needed to. That diving touchdown was electric. He read the defense well. He put the ball in places where only his receivers could get to it. His one interception was off of a tip. I was really impressed. And if Washington does decide that he's the guy, if they can't make a play for a guy like Deshaun Watson or Dak Prescott or somebody of that ilk, and they decide that they're going to move forward with Tyler Heineke, obviously it's one game. I can't say, that, yeah, he's going to be amazing for them for sure. But I could understand why there would be a reasonable level of confidence in that building that Heineke can be the guy.
Well, I mean, the players like him,
Players love him.
Yeah, which is that speaks to something. I mean, so he's clearly got something going for him there. I think that he certainly earned himself some money. Like, there's no doubt this guy should be on a roster somewhere at the very least. Like, he's worthy of being in the backup circuit. I don't
At
see
minimum, absolutely.
I don't see how you could watch what he did on Sunday or Saturday
night.
And also kind of what we saw him do when he spelled Dwayne Haskins against the Panthers, where he looked pretty good for that brief stint. Obviously, this is an incredibly small sample size, and the resume prior to this is pretty weak, but that doesn't mean that he's not worthy of a job. I mean, you can't tell me this guy's not better than Chase Daniel. And Chase Daniel's been around. He's made like $37 million playing in the pros. So he should at least have that opportunity. And if the team can't, like you said, Corey, find somebody that's a bona fide, starter, like a Deshaun Watson, which is obviously a long shot, or someone like Matt Stafford, who might be on the move, or Dak Prescott, depending on what the Cowboys do with him. If they can't get a guy like that, I have no issue if Heineke goes into camp and has the opportunity to compete for the starting gig. And based on what I've seen, he's probably going to outperform anybody else you get off the street. Like, you're not going to find somebody off the scrap heap that isn't already coronated the starter that's necessarily just going to beat this guy out. It could happen. He could regress and become something less than what we saw. But what was most encouraging to me wasn't so much what Heineke did as far as will Heineke be the future. It was the fact that we watched a guy who's, nobody had ever heard of really, come in, play competent quarterback, and the offense looked good, which tells me that if they get a quarterback that can play, the offense is going to look good. It's not – everybody talked about all season how we complained about, maybe Dwayne Haskins just doesn't have any help. The offensive line's not good enough. They don't have good enough receivers. Well, I watched Taylor Heineke come out of cold storage and go toe-to-toe with Tom Brady for 4 quarters in a playoff game.
He did have to deal with some pressure that he probably shouldn't have in some instances where the offensive line did let guys back there and he had to extend the play. But still, clearly it's possible to play behind them.
And the Bucs have a good pass rush. That's what they do. So, the fact that they did as well as they did, again, if you've got a competent quarterback, this team, especially with the defense that they showed, could be really competitive. The thing that was holding them back was They had Dwayne Haskins back there, who has no idea what the hell he's doing and doesn't deserve to be a pro anymore. And they had Alex Smith, who, we love the guy and we're really happy for what he was able to do this year. But he's a shot fighter at this point. He doesn't have the physical ability to play quarterback at the high level that he used to be able to play. So if they can get somebody like that, this team's going to be pretty good. It's a matter of, whether or not Heineke's the guy. That's obviously left to be determined. But he should have an opportunity to get that crack at the starting gig, unless, of course, they go and make a big splash.
Yeah, after the game, I was doing a write up on my Facebook page, just like getting some thoughts out there about his performance and whatnot. And I started to say that this was maybe the best performance I'd seen by a Washington quarterback maybe in my lifetime. And then I walked back. I didn't put that in there because I'm thinking, there have been so many games. We've had Mark Brunell. We've had guys who they weren't always really good. Mark Brunell certainly had plenty of terrible games for us. Jason Campbell had plenty of terrible games for us. But there's got to have been a few really good games mixed in there. But as it turns out, again, this is not my entire life. Like I was about to say, this is more like half my life, 14 years. But this was the highest single game grade by a Washington quarterback by Pro Football Focus in 14 years.
I mean, that's cool, but I'm not going to sit there and say that he had a better game than some of the games we saw RG3 play in his rookie year. I mean, he was electric. I mean, my eyes can tell me that RG3 had better games than what Heineke did. I don't need PFF to tell me that. PFF is a single data point and far from an authoritative
sure.
one.
Okay. On to the Ravens. When this game ended, I just rolled over on my couch and laid down. Like, that's the level of stress that I felt sustained over 3 hours. I just needed to go back to bed. The sun's shining bright. It's 4:00 in the afternoon. I had to lay down. So Lamar started off just completely perpetuating the narrative how Lamar can't play in the playoffs. He throws this wounded duck interception, one of the worst interceptions I have ever seen in my life. Any level of football, like pick up football in the yard or in the road. Like where are you throwing the ball at, man? Like what was that? That was brutal. That was and then I guess I had the quarterback coach in his ear, and they completely righted the ship. They got down 10-0 right away. Got it to 10-3. The first half is winding down, and like it's 3rd and 9, and they have Lamar dead to rights in more ways than one. Like he should have been sacked. So then he gets out of the pocket somehow, and then the Titans have a defense. They're basically double spying Lamar with their 2 safeties, but Lamar just runs right by them too. Like what type of freakish athleticism? Like he's the freak of freaks. Like everybody in the NFL is the most gifted and athletic person that anybody from their town has ever seen. And Lamar's just running by them like they're standing still. So that was amazing. The Ravens' defense certainly deserves to be shouted out, holding Derrick Henry to 40 yards after he really specialized in just running over and embarrassing people. Looking at you, Earl Thomas, the last NFL game you played. It's not really a good look right there. Calais Campbell, Brandon Williams, Derek Wolfe, Matthew Judon, those guys up front just devoured and manhandled the Titans' offensive line. So a lot of people saying, well, Derrick Henry, this is why you don't pay running backs. There was nowhere for him to go. Like, it doesn't matter who the running back is. If there's no hole, like, he just goes down. There was nothing he could have done differently. I feel like he was just completely stuffed. His longest carry was 8 yards. Not 90 yards or whatever, 8. He didn't run for a first down. at all. The
Yeah,
Titans
this was
only
the guy
rushing
who
first
led
down
the
was a
league in
quarterback
first down
sneak.
rushes.
Yeah.
He had 70 some of them on the season at least.
I thought he had 70 against the Texans in Week 17.
Yeah, I mean, watching that 8-yard run, I feel like for Ravens fans, it must have been terrifying because it looked like it could have easily.
He was about to
turned
go to the
into-
house.
He was about to go all the way there, man. I was like that. I've seen that portion of that run many times, and it almost always leads to Derrick Henry just running down the field like a locomotive, and he's going to the house.
Not to mention, it's an indication that he's heating up into the flow of the game, and he's gonna break one pretty soon.
Yeah, but the Ravens held him at bay. This was such an interesting game because, all the crap that we've heard about Lamar Jackson supposedly can't play in the playoffs after 2 games.
That's a big sample size
against a much better Chargers team, by the way.
Right. And the first playoff game he played, Lamar Jackson, to be honest, his rookie year, he wasn't even good. He was just out there, making it happen with a pretty mediocre offense that he led. I mean, the Ravens kind of squeaked. They were like 8-7-1 or something like that year. They didn't have a great record.
6.
Okay, well, they were not that good, and they were clearly
the
overmatched.
Steelers collapsing.
Yeah,
we'll get to them in a minute.
Yeah,
Speaking of Steelers collapsing, it was the Steelers collapsing. They were 9-6-1. They figured out how to lose a bunch of games to some dumb teams, including the Raiders down the stretch.
Yep.
That got the Ravens in half a game.
Yeah. So, but then the announcers, especially Brian Greasy, was just he was saying this bizarre stuff to try to I guess perpetuate this narrative that Lamar can't play in the playoffs or whatever. And he's talking about how Lamar Jackson was a Heisman winner. He won an MVP. But as a team player, he's never won anything. And I'm like, he's 24. What do you want him to do? He played at Louisville. You expect him to lead Louisville to win the ACC? Are you kidding me? He's just it was just such a bizarre piece of commentary where it almost was like he's ripping Lamar Jackson as he's cruising down the field for that, glorious touchdown that he had. And just this obsession with making this seem like because the Ravens won this game, that suddenly proved that Lamar is maturing. Like when he sat down on that run, I said, the maturation of Lamar Jackson is coming to fruition. I'm like, he would have done that last year too. He's always been smart when he runs the ball. This idea that just because he's winning this time suddenly means that everything has changed now. It's no, he's the same guy he was, and what he was great. It's just that they finally got a W this time, and they did it in a way that a lot of people said that they couldn't. They fell behind. A lot of people felt the Ravens, this brand of Ravens football that relies so heavily on the running game, can't come back when they get down by any measurable amount of points, multiple possessions. And sure as what they did? They did exactly that. They came back, they took care of business, the defense locked it up, and now they're going on to play the Bills. And frankly, if I were the Bills, I'd definitely be worried because the Ravens are hot.
I mean, I think all the in sports and in life, it's sort of it can be defined by a narrative, and people can get a little fixated on the narrative. So the Lamar can't win in the playoffs, that was just an easy and lazy thing to fix your brain on, when in reality, in 2018 they got beat by a better team, and in 2019 they choked. That's the end of the sample size. So you're sort of putting together a narrative with incomplete pieces. What? There's nothing here. It certainly looked like that was going to continue in the first quarter. It was certainly trending that way. But yeah, that's over now. So
if you took a snapshot of a 2-game sample size of Tom Brady's playoff resume, and you looked at what happened in 2009 when they got blown out by the Ravens.
Tom Brady sucked that day. He was terrible.
He was awful. That's the worst playoff game he's ever played. And the second worst playoff game that he ever played was the following year against the Jets when they were heavily favored. They went 14-2, and Rex Ryan and Bart Scott said, can't wait after they beat the Patriots in Foxborough. Those 2 games, if we looked at Tom Brady, the winningest playoff quarterback of all time, and we limited his story to 2 games of our choosing, we could make him out to be the biggest choker in the world because he won an MVP and went 14-2 that year that they lost to the Jets, and he looked bad. So It just goes to show 2 games doesn't mean squat.
I mean, if you're Tom Brady, how do you lose playoff games to Joe Flacco and Mark Sanchez? How does that happen?
I mean, he lost
by
to
being
Joe
a terrible
Flacco
football
twice.
player. That's how.
Peyton Manning also lost to both of those guys.
Well, but Peyton Manning is good, so.
I'm not going to say Peyton Manning is not good because I'm not. I'm not going to be an idiot like Corey when he says, "Oh, Tom Brady sucks."
We would have to get fact checked for that.
Well, after those 2 games in 2009 and 10, Tom Brady clearly a bum. I don't know why anybody would want him.
And of course, the funny thing is, now that I've mentioned that, a lot of the people that just love to hate Tom Brady all came out and said, "See, he's not that good in the playoffs because of those 2 games." I'm like, but you're just ignoring the previous 7 years of getting to the Super Bowl every other year. Like, what are you talking about? It's a weird situation.
Yeah, I mean, people can say whatever they want, but
people believe what they want to believe. Ultimately, like if they want to believe Tom Brady really sucks, they're gonna believe that against all evidence until they absolutely have no choice.
I mean, that's just human nature as well. Like if you think something, whatever your first opinion was, you will defend that to the death rather than say that you've been convinced otherwise.
With one caveat, you'll do that if you've voiced that opinion.
If it's a lie, you'll fight on that lie. That's the way it'll work, you know. But the better of us know how to grow and evolve and take new information and let it affect our ultimate opinion instead of just relying on what we thought when we were 12.
Right. I mean, dumb people act like they know everything, and smart people know that they don't know some stuff. That's really what it boils down to. Going to talk about the dancing on the logo situation. So this, I mean, just a lot of people were also saying that the Ravens and Titans was a new rivalry and stuff. Like, this is not a new rivalry. This is an old rivalry from the late 90s. You had 2 teams that just moved. They didn't like each other then. And it sort of got like when the divisions realigned and the Titans were kicked out of the AFC Central to be in the AFC South with the Jaguars. The rivalry sort of cooled off. But like this rivalry was a big deal. These 2 teams represented the AFC in the Super Bowl back-to-back years in 99 and 2000. Had a lot of star power back then with Steve McNair and Ray Lewis. And Eddie George, among others.
Jamal Lewis.
Jamal Lewis. All those type of people. So, this was a huge deal. But then, after the division realignment, the Ravens and Steelers rivalry was heated up after that, and this one kind of went to the back burner. But now, these 2 teams just hate each other so much. Like the Ravens and Steelers has had so much hate for so long, but then so much respect. Like you just mix all that together, and it's the Spider-Man meme. Like you see yourself in the other side, even though you hate them so much. You're like, well, they're just us. So there's been so much hate, it's come all the way back around to like again. It's crazy, but this the Ravens and Titans, like they hate each other so much. So like back in November, it was the Sunday before Thanksgiving, in pregame, the Titans assembled on the Ravens logo, which is a shield in the middle of the field. And John Harbaugh had to be restrained by some other coach or somebody, and that was taken personally. And then the Ravens beat the Titans that day. So,
well, yeah, I mean, you look at the Titans helmet and the logo. What does the T look like? Looks like
sword.
Yeah, and what blocks a sword?
A shield.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I like that. I didn't think of it that way. But anyway, so Marcus Peters gets an interception right after the 2-minute warning.
Eric isn't amused, and I don't know why. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. It's just it's cheesy, man.
I liked it. I thought that was good.
Whatever floats your boat, but I don't know. I just thought that was kind of corny.
Anyway, so Peters gets an interception, slides down, and goes out to midfield to celebrate. And half the Ravens team goes out and dances on their logo, too. They're stomping, they're sitting, there's waving and stuff. And the Ravens earned a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty for getting a couple first downs and icing the game. And frankly, I'm fine with this. I mean, I don't like how they got a penalty. The game wasn't over. The Titans had all their timeouts at that point. They were only down by 7. But, I'm all for the petty. I love reality TV. And, when people start sniping back at each other over silly stuff, I just have my bowl of popcorn and I am glued to the television. So, when this happened, it was just take some of that. I was taught growing up how you're supposed to forgive people and stuff, but I believe in vengeance, and it was beautiful.
Definitely in sports. Kind of an aside, going back to the NBA, we had a pretty spectacular moment of petty. Although I wouldn't really describe it as petty, but that's how the broadcasters did. LeBron James was open for a corner 3 right in front of his own bench, and Dennis Schroeder said to LeBron in his ear, as he was getting ready to shoot the shot, "I bet you don't make it." And so LeBron takes the shot, and while the ball's in the air, he turns around to Dennis, looks him in the eye, and says, "It's a bet." And the ball goes through the net, and the bench went crazy. And it was just it was a bizarre sequence because it was Steph-esque, because Curry oftentimes, when he's wide open for a corner 3 and he cuts it loose, he'll turn around and stunt for the bench a little bit before it goes through. But that was thoroughly entertaining last night. I appreciate that, especially because it was happening to the Rockets.
So LeBron showboated in front of his own bench or the Rockets bench?
In front of his own bench with his teammates. Oh. Yeah.
That's not as much fun.
Yeah, but it was still pretty fun.
It's less likely to create a Twitter uproar.
If you're an NBA player, you should be able to make a 3-pointer. So, it's not like he shot the ball with his eyes closed or not looking. He shot the ball and then turned around.
Yeah,
I don't feel like that's that impressive.
It wasn't super impressive. I wasn't saying it was a feat of greatness. It was just enjoyable, players yucking it up on the court during a blowout. I mean, that wouldn't happen during a close playoff game. They were goofing on the Rockets at that point.
Well, the Rockets are a clown show.
It reminds me of the Warriors when they were blowing a team out, and Steve Kerr let Draymond Green and Andre Iguodala coach from the bench and draw plays up, while Kerr just went and sat over somewhere else and chilled.
Went and got a hot dog.
Yeah, exactly. That was, a lot of people would see that as, showing the opponent up, which, I don't care.
There's no such thing as showing up your opponent in the pros. It's the pros. Go beat them. How about that? Right? You've worked your whole life, and they're like, "Oh, they're being mean." I'm in agreement there, but I also know that there's no way Steve Kerr would have done that to a coach he respected, like Greg Popovich. He only did that to somebody he doesn't care about. Oh, okay. Let's see. So we talk about the Ravens, the Colts, and the Bills. I was kind of indifferent about this game, to be honest.
It was probably the most competitive game of the weekend, though.
It was.
Was?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I thought the Bills got out to a big lead and blew it. I didn't really feel like the Colts were legitimate contenders on Saturday.
The Colts were ahead for most of the first half. In fact, the game turned when Frank Reich decided to go for it on 4th and 4, or 4th and goal from the 4, I should say. And they didn't pick it up. They didn't score the touchdown.
Oh yeah, and that was dumb.
Yeah, that was pretty dumb. And then the Bills drove down the field and were in field goal range, and we're doing an obvious hard count thing, and the Colts fell for it, and then so the Bills ended up getting a touchdown out of that. And so of course there was all this hullabaloo about, did Frank Reich make the right call by going for it on 4th down? At which point people pointed out, well, the game would have been tied otherwise. I'm like, you don't know that, you don't know how it would have played out. And then,
of course, call they made was on 3rd down.
Yeah, I agree.
They run a reverse to lose 3 yards.
Yeah, that was the dumb part, because that puts you in a position where, because if you get stuffed on a 4th down run or a 3rd down run on 3rd and goal from the 1, but you don't lose any yards, yeah, then you can go for it because you've got a pretty darn good chance of getting the touchdown. But 4th and goal from the 4, you got to throw the ball in that situation. You can't run it at that point. Your chances of converting that are definitely less than 50%.
It's
Which
like
means
getting a penalty down there, like a false start or something. You just backed yourself up with an unforced error.
Yeah, that was ugly. And the decision to not kick the field goal, I mean, time and place. I get being aggressive, but you're ahead. You can go up by 6. Your defense has played really well. I mean, just kick the field goal, have your defense keep them out of the end zone, or maybe even shut them down for the rest of the half. Go into the half with a lead, but they got cute, went for it, didn't get it. Then the defense screwed up, and then they ultimately lost the game. But I mean, it was a compelling game. We saw a little bit of the old Josh Allen come out in the second half when he started being a little goofy with the football. Had a long sack, kind of resembled a little bit what he did against the Texans last year, where he was running the wrong way repeatedly and getting sacked for like 28-yard losses. Well, this time he ran backwards like 22 yards and fumbled the ball, and the Colts somehow didn't jump on it. I mean, it was definitely not his finest moment, and it resembled something that we would have seen last year that made us say, I don't know about this kid. But other than that, he played pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have thoughts on this one, Corey?
Honestly, I wasn't able to listen to what you guys said. I don't want to repeat any talking points. They're having an issue streaming the basketball game at DeMatha, and so I'm getting texts right now.
Oh, okay. Your actual job.
Yes.
Something important.
But our stuff did get recorded, right?
Our stuff is being recorded.
Okay, but
I thought you were daydreaming, like just
off into the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a basketball game that starts in 2 minutes, and for whatever reason, they're not able to get it streaming. So
okay,
that's a shame.
Yep. Oh well.
All right. Also, I guess the Seahawks and Rams. This game wasn't quite as weird as I predicted, but the Seahawks should be thanking the Steelers on bended knee that they didn't turn in the worst clunker of the weekend. That was brutal from the Seahawks. Y'all didn't show up at all. The Seahawks offensive line is terrible. You can ask Dr. We Notice about that because we notice they're terrible every single year and they don't fix it.
Yeah, it's bad. And Brian Schottenheimer got fired. They cut him loose as the offensive coordinator. So some would say that was encouraging until Pete Carroll kind of came out and said, we want to get back to establishing the run. I'm like, oh, God, don't do that.
Pete Carroll revealing that he's the oldest coach in the NFL.
Yes. But at the same time, this blows back on Russ pretty hard. I mean, you can't lose this game. You're at home. Your opponent is starting a backup who gets hurt, so they have to bring in the starter who wasn't fit to start because of the injury. And Jared Goff played like crap, understandably so. He could barely grip the football, apparently. Mm-hmm. And Aaron Donald sustains a rib injury with a lot of time left in the second half in a competitive game, and they still couldn't get anything going. And frankly, as much as we talk about, Russ, like we talked about in the past, how like the media has recently caught on to the fact that he's never received an MVP vote, and they think, oh my God, that's so egregious. Well, he shouldn't get one this year. And frankly, in the years that he didn't get them, he didn't really deserve them either. So I don't really understand why that's such a big fuss. But I feel like Russ gets a pass a lot, and I don't know why. Like I have always given him a ton of credit, but I'm going to give him a ton of blame when he screws up. I mean, I remember back when they lost the Super Bowl to the Patriots, a legitimate talking point was Russell Wilson was a Super Bowl champion and should be a 2-time Super Bowl champion if it wasn't for Pete Carroll's call. And I'm like, who threw the interception? I'm
right.
like he somehow escaped blame for the biggest blunder on the goal line in Super Bowl history. He threw the ball.
Well, Matt Patricia takes all the credit.
Yes, he does. Not the guy that picked it off, and apparently the blame doesn't go to the guy that threw it. I mean, it was crazy that got swept under the rug. People act like that wasn't Russ's fault, even though the play design was fine. Russ needed to see that the guy had jumped the route, and he did. So I mean, and people said the same thing this week when he threw that pick six on that screen pass to DK Metcalf. Like people say, oh well, that was the design play. I'm like, okay, but you kind of have to see if the defender jumped the route, not to throw it there. And he threw it right to the defender who housed it. I don't understand why a quarterback gets a pass for throwing it directly to the opponent. That's not how this works. Your job is to throw it to your team.
The last time Georgia Tech beat Clemson, we scored 2 pick sixes on that type of play, where they threw a little screen out to the side and it was taken back to the house.
Yeah, so it was not a good performance from Russ at all. I'm sure next year, at the start of the year, we'll hear more people saying, getting on the Russ for MVP bandwagon. I'm sure he'll have another great 8 weeks to start the season, just like he did last year, just like he did this year. And then he's going to have some bad games. Somebody's going to usurp him. And then this is going to happen again, and we're going to be talking about this all over again. But this is a game that absolutely should go as a black mark on his resume. And that's not a bad thing. A lot of quarterbacks have games like that, but this is one of his.
So that interception on the screen pass to Metcalf was the first interception all year on a screen pass to a wide receiver. There had been 784 pass attempts, screen passes to receivers. That was the first one to be picked off.
And see, that sounds funny because I seem to recall back in 2014 when everybody was blaming Pete Carroll for the interception on the goal line, that Russell Wilson's interception was the only interception on the goal line in that situation. There have been hundreds of passes thrown in that situation. Some of them were complete. Most of them were completed for touchdowns. None of them were picked off. So at some point, who's the outlier here? It's the quarterback. He made a dumb throw.
Yeah. Wilson has been messing up a lot lately. We're going to get to the best and worst of Wild Card Weekend, but Russell Wilson was the worst quarterback of the weekend, according to Football Outsiders Quick Reads.
It seems right because he was awful. Even with the adjustments that he probably benefited from playing the Rams, he was just that bad.
Yep.
Okay. The second game Sunday, which was also a Nickelodeon, which was delightful.
That was actually fun. I
thoroughly enjoyed that.
I tuned in just because I was like, I got to see what this new type of broadcast looks like. Just, I teach broadcast journalism. I care about graphics. I want to see what this looks like. But I fully expected that within, 10, 20 minutes, I'd be switching over to the CBS call. I stuck with Nickelodeon the whole way. It was fun.
Yeah, I started out flipping back and forth, and I'm like, the Nickelodeon one is so much more fun. It's just so colorful and bubbly.
Nate Burleson was great.
Yeah. Noah Eagle was great.
Yeah,
Noah Eagle was fantastic.
Yeah.
I also, my concern at first was when they kept showing in the pregame show, they were showing all the players running around the field like Michael Thomas with the googly eyes and the stuff like that. I was like, they're not going to try to do that during the game. I was like, they're not going to try to transpose that crap during the action because then I'm going to have to change it. But they didn't. They only got silly during field goal attempts with SpongeBob in the uprights and of course the slime zone, which was wonderful.
Yes. They had some issues early in the game with the first down and line of scrimmage markers moving all over the field, but they seemed to get that fixed, which was good. Yeah, that would have made it about unwatchable for me, I think.
Yeah, you got to have the basics down, and they got that together pretty well.
And Gabby was fine in the booth.
Mitch Trubisky won MVP,
which still on his Pro Football Reference page.
Which is hilarious because he did not play a very good game. But hey, the kids are going to vote, and as somebody pointed out, don't razz the kids too hard. Adults picked Mitch Trubisky over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes.
They did.
So you can't hate on the kids too badly. But as for the game, the Saints were clearly the better team coming in. They played around a little bit in the first half. They had a missed field goal. They made some questionable play calls down in the red zone and stuff like that. But they were moving the ball pretty well. The Bears had one successful looking play where they ran that trick play and Javon Wims was wide open and he dropped the football. And I'd like to note that C.J. Gardner-Johnson got another Bears receiver kicked out of the game. So that's the second time this year that he's gotten a Bears receiver kicked out of the game. Not to mention he also got Michael Thomas kicked off the team for a week. This guy is the Cortland Finnegan of our day right now. So, good for him. Next week,
He's
maybe
got a
he'll
little catching up to do to get on par with the actual Cortland Finnegan, but
Well, hopefully he doesn't.
Does he? I mean,
hopefully he doesn't catch hands like Cortland Finnegan did against Andre Johnson.
Andre Johnson kicked his ass.
Oh yeah, it was wonderful.
That was a delight.
Yeah, that was a wonderful thing to watch. But maybe this week he can get in Antonio Brown's head a little bit and get him thrown off the field. It shouldn't be too hard. The guy's got problems. But yeah, and the Saints defense was great. And because the thing is, like I said, Mitch didn't play a great game, but I didn't really see anything from Mitch that made me say, wow, that's the Mitch Trubisky I know. That guy sucks. Like, he did the best he could.
But part of that almost appeared to be by design because Matt Nagy and the Bears coaching staff didn't give him an opportunity to show us anything that would make us think, oh, that's the Mitch Trubisky that we know and love.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that. It seemed like the play calling sort of neutered Mitch Trubisky a little bit. Like
100%.
The most, like, frankly, I don't know who owns the Bears. I forget his or her name. Whatever family.
Virginia McCaskey.
Okay. It would have been reasonable if at halftime they had walked down to the locker room and cut Matt Nagy loose after they gave away a possession with 2 minutes left in a playoff game that they were losing. They were down 7-3, got the ball back with a full 2 minutes on the clock and multiple timeouts in their pocket, down 4 points in a win-or-go-home game, and they just said, we're not interested in this possession. Like this idea of, oh, we're worried he's going to turn it over. Well, you're going to have to worry about that on every possession. What's your point? You've got to go score points. You're in a playoff game. Like, you can't just sit there and say, hey, we get the ball 10 times maybe, and hey, let's just give one of them away. And sure enough, what happened? The Saints came out in the second half, had 3 possessions. Each team had 3 possessions because the Saints choked the life out of the game, which is what they've done in the last few years. They've run the crap out of the ball. They've methodically moved down the field. They take 8 minutes to go down the field, as Evan's well aware when the Saints played the Ravens a few years back, and they took up the whole first quarter on a drive. This is what they
scored no points.
They didn't score any points either, but they won the game. But this is what they do, and the Saints scored 2 touchdowns on those drives, and damn near scored a third, with Drew Brees barely not getting into the end zone on that goal line play, and that was that. And the Bears were totally out of the game after the half because they didn't try to be in the game before the half.
Okay. I mean, what do you think does this say anything about the new playoff format that both 7 seeds lost? Like,
the 7 seed
does that matter?
The 7 seed is supposed to lose, right? Mm-hmm. I mean,
well, and like we said, the Colts competed.
The 5 and the 6 both won.
Okay, but think about when you're watching the NCAA tournament, right? Mm-hmm. You expect the 15 seed to lose to the 2 seed. It doesn't always happen, but it usually does, unless you're Duke. But when it's the 8 and the 9 seed actually has above a 50% winning percentage against the 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. That's normal.
Okay, I mean, just wondering.
And like I said, I've never been a fan of expanding the playoffs, but if you're going to make the case that the 7th seed doesn't belong because they can't win, the Colts, I think, proved that they could win. I mean, they were in the game.
Yeah.
The Bears weren't, but we kind of figured they wouldn't be. And to be fair to the Bears, they were playing a really strong team. I mean, I don't think that the Seahawks would have competed or the Rams would have competed against the Saints in their current state. They would have lost. I think the only team that was in the wild card mix in the NFC that I think could hang with the Saints is probably the Bucs, who they play this week. But I mean, that's it. I mean, it's the Bucs, the Packers, obviously, who are the 1 seed. That's it. And the rest of the field doesn't stand a chance against the Saints.
Yeah, I think it speaks to just how weak the NFC is.
Yeah, I mean, there's three teams that you would think could win the Super Bowl out of the NFC. There's like 6 in the AFC.
Yeah. All right. On to the last game. The Steelers and the Browns. I guess the Steelers' invitation to show up to this game got lost in the mail. 28-0 in the first quarter. What happened? This was an unmitigated disaster from the word go. Like, I was getting my lasagna out of the oven right after kickoff, and I hear over my shoulder that there's commotion from Al. Like, wait, what happened? What happened? I almost burned myself. Run over. The ball is zooming over Ben Roethlisberger's head. How do you snap the ball over someone's head who's 6'4"?
I mean,
he's literally Big Ben. Seemed like it'd be
Peyton
hard
Manning
to do.
is 6'5", and look what happened in the Super Bowl against the Seahawks.
Well, that didn't go over his head. That went by him when he wasn't looking.
That's true. That's a good point. It was at head level.
Didn't this one go to his side? I didn't think this one went over Ben's head.
It was
right
way
over.
over his head. It was well north of his head. But
And then the two guys couldn't figure out how to fall on the ball.
as
I
Corey,
believe there were business decisions made.
yes, as Corey mentioned,
major business decision by Ben.
What would have happened? What would have been the narrative if that was Cam Newton? Because we already saw what happened with Cam.
Right.
And the thing is with Cam, like on that play, if he picks it up, it's like 4th and 20. So they're screwed anyway. If Ben picks that ball up, it's the first drive.
Second down.
It's second down in an eternity, but they can still just pick up another 10, 15 yards and punt. And no harm, no foul, move on. But instead they give up a touchdown, and that set the tone for the entire game because he wouldn't jump on the ball. I mean, it was an I got it, you take it type of situation between him and James Conner. And in the end, Brown ended up on the ball in the end zone. And that was we were off to the races at that point because I was flipping back between that and a Maryland game on Sunday. And I tune in, I see it's 7-0 Browns, and there's like 14:50 on the clock. And I was like, oh, would it been through a pick six or something? I was like, close enough. The ball got snapped over his head, and they jumped on it. I was like, okay, fluke play, whatever. The Steelers will get it back. Then I flip back. It's 14-0. I'm like, okay. And then it was 21-0. I'm like, all right, well, the Browns are going to win then, apparently. Okay, cool. Whatever. That's interesting. So, I mean, it was ugly, and I don't give a damn about Ben throwing for 500 yards. He threw 68 passes. And most of those yards came when the Browns were kind of playing off because they were ahead. And credit the Browns too because they didn't Browns the game up. I mean, the Steelers were showing some life. They got within 12, I think. Mm-hmm. They made a very strange decision to punt on 4th and 1 when they had, their offense had been cooking and they still needed to score 2 more touchdowns to potentially win the game. They punted back to the Browns, but the thing is, at that point, Baker and the Browns took over, and they went and scored, and that kind of put the game away. And then the Steelers scored again, and the Browns still put together another drive. They kept their foot on the gas, and that's how they ultimately came away with the win. I mean, it wasn't just like the Steelers completely handed it to them. They gave them a big jump out from the gate, but they had to continue to cement the win, and that's something that the Browns historically have not done. So they deserve some credit for that.
Yeah, this is the first Browns road playoff win since 1969. Yeah, it's been a little while. Yeah, the Orioles were in the World Series that year.
Yeah, they lost.
My parents were like 3.
my parents were like 12 and 13. Yeah. You guys think Ben's done?
Yes.
Probably, yeah. I mean, you asked me that question at the beginning of the year, and I'm sitting here thinking, wow, he's actually got something left in the tank. This is impressive because he's been not very good the past couple of years throwing the ball. But it gradually got worse, and then it very suddenly got horrible right around week 13. And
when I ask the question, I don't mean do you think he's done being good? I mean, do you think he's done playing football?
Yes. I don't see anything there. Like the orange has had all the juice squeezed out of it. Right? He's had a great career. He's going to the Hall of Fame. He's won a couple championships. Stayed rent-free in my mind for a little while, just terrorizing my team.
I could see him giving it one more year, just knowing that he's got a really good defense to come back to. He's got some really good offensive weapons. One of the things that I have noticed is that in the latter half of the season, the times that he has played well are the times that they're in a hurry-up offense, and so he's basically calling his own plays, or any other situation where it appeared that he was the one calling the shots. When he was choosing the plays, things were going well. He was very creative. There were reports that he was calling plays that they hadn't run in practice all year, much less called in a game, and they were working. So I could see him coming back if the circumstances were such that he had a little bit more control over the game plan, over calling plays. They get a different offensive coordinator, something to give the offense a little more of a jump start and keep it fresh throughout the year, because he's got great weapons and he's got a great defense. I could see him giving it one more shot.
I don't think the Steelers want him back.
I mean, he's going to cost a lot of money, and the thing is, like Corey, you mentioned that they've got great defense and great offensive support, but they've got 17 or 18 free agents coming up this year. So this team's going to look a lot different come next year, especially because if Ben's there, and Ben's got a $41 million cap hit when you account for all the dead money on his contract, they're not going to be able to bring all those guys back, especially if he stays.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So the Steelers, like Evan said, they might not want him back. But the thing is, if he doesn't come back, the Steelers still have to pay $22 million in dead cap. So they're in a bad situation no matter what. And I don't think Ben would suit up for another team. Like if they said, "Hey, we're going to trade you and like stick a pick in your pocket
you to the Lions,
yeah, or wherever to just to get your salary off the books," I don't see him saying, "Yeah, let me go play for a crappy team." I think he would want to play for a contender, because frankly he needs a contender to be a factor.
Yeah.
He's like we talked about, he's not a guy that's going to go and transform an offense. He doesn't have that in the tank anymore.
But there's also no such thing as a contending team that needs a quarterback. Like, you can't contend without one.
Generally speaking, that's true.
So, like, any potential landing spot.
But the thing is, you have to consider it's not necessarily that they need to be. They need to already be a contender. They need to be only a quarterback away from being a contender. And there are teams that exist that are like that. Washington was, not quite that, because the receiving core is pretty much trash behind McLaurin. Granted, I mean, Heineke and made Cam Sims look amazing. But behind McLaurin, they didn't really have a whole lot of receiver. They're, quarterback and a receiver and maybe some offensive line pieces away. But there are, almost every year, there's at least a team that's a quarterback away.
Yeah, we saw it with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, people, they said out loud, "Why the hell is Tom Brady going to the Bucs?" I'm like, well, they had a quarterback that threw 30 interceptions and they went 7-9. So
fumbled 7 more times.
Yeah, so if he can be reasonably better than that, which of course you knew he would be, then they're going to be a contending team. And sure enough, they're 11-5. They're playing the divisional round and have a shot at least to get to the Super Bowl. So,
yep.
But I just
Chicago Bears maybe.
The Chicago Bears could be an option, but like I said, Ben doesn't look like the guy that's going to come in and be transformative for an offense. He's not there anymore, and that's fine. He's like 38. He's gotten the crap beat out of him his whole career, and to be frank, he's not exactly on the TB12 method. So it's all right if he's if he's a little bit done. He lived a little bit of a faster life both on and off the field, and so he's not meant to play into his 40s, and that's most quarterbacks historically. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Let's see. So those are all the games that have happened. Let's talk about some news that happened. Doug, don't call me Stinky Peterson. Turns out he is Stinky Peterson because he's gone. This was not a surprise to me. Apparently, it's a bit more of a power struggle between Wentz and Peterson, deciding which one of them gets to stay and which one has to leave. Carson Wentz is owed like $100 million.
They should both have to leave. This is not like this. This almost makes Carson Wentz's situation feel like Aaron Rodgers' situation when they got like that. They are not. This is not the same thing. Wentz sucks too.
Yeah, like Doug Peterson, like you had the Super Bowl team, and it's now been turned. They finished in last place in the NFC East. That is hard to do.
I get that.
How do you do that?
I get that we like to say it's one or the other in all these situations. Y'all know both is also an option.
That is true. That is very true.
Well, especially
it's not my $100 million that I have to pay Carson Wentz.
Well, especially because, let's be honest, if Carson Wentz played something resembling good quarterback, then the Eagles would have made the playoffs, and we wouldn't be talking about Doug Peterson looking for a job. So I think, though, part of it was what happened in Week 17. Like, there was some outrage over that. Like, people didn't like that.
Including in the locker room, and that's the thing that matters the most in that case.
I don't care.
I don't care. Yeah, I don't care that the Giants are upset. I don't care if fans are annoyed by it. The players, that matters, because if you piss the players off with a move like that, that affects morale. That affects the way that they play for you.
Are you saying that Philly fans weren't really calm and understanding about something?
Nope.
No, mind blowing, isn't it? Who knew?
Wow.
And I kind of we wondered about this a little bit. Where would Doug Peterson get extra leash because he won a Super Bowl? And I thought he kind of did. They talked about bringing him back, that's the only reason why I was surprised by this, is because just a couple of weeks ago, the Eagles, at least projected intent, was to continue to have him on as coach. But it's seemingly things have changed. And I think it's laughable if they did this because Carson Wentz doesn't like him. It should be because he was an ineffective coach. I mean, Carson Wentz's opinion should be worth less than nothing. He was less than a replacement level quarterback. So, therefore, he was a detriment to the squad. I don't know why you would take his opinion under advisement. The Eagles clearly saw something wrong with the guy because they spent a second-round pick on a quarterback to potentially replace him. You don't do that with a 27, 28-year-old quarterback you're paying $100 million if you don't think he's got some problems.
I feel like there's so many issues that lay at Doug Peterson's feet. Like, Carson Wentz was in the MVP discussion the year they won the Super Bowl, and now Carson Wentz is a bum. Like, what happened in the coaching situation that suddenly this guy sucks? Why is he? How do you make a player worse? How does that happen? How do you make somebody so incredibly awful that he can't even suit up for you?
Yeah, it's a bizarre situation because even in that MVP year, you saw some of the flaws that Carson Wentz had.
It was his second season.
But you saw them maybe on 10 to 15% of the snaps. This year, you saw him on like 60% of the snaps.
100% of the snaps.
It was like virtually every play, he was doing something really, really stupid. And not only would that have been unacceptable for a second-year quarterback, once you're in your fifth year, you got to be better than that, man. And he was
get paid.
He was 100 times worse, man. He was terrible. I don't get how anybody could look at him and say, yeah, that's the guy. I mean, he's had I think it's in his head because he's shown a tendency to let things get under his skin. The Nick Foles situation got under his skin. The fact that Foles came in, won the Super Bowl.
Got a statue.
Foles got all the credit, got a statue for doing so. And then the next year, Wentz has a pretty middling season coming back, gets hurt again. Foles comes in, wins a playoff game, almost gets back to the NFC Championship game. If not for Alshon Jeffrey letting a ball go right through his hands that turned into a pick, they could have won that game in New Orleans. And then he gets shipped out of town and gets paid a bunch of money. And everybody's looking at you saying, all right, well, what do you got for me? Mm-hmm. And he just couldn't handle that.
Well, don't introduce him to C.J. Gardner-Johnson then. Right? Isn't that the Saints defensive back?
Yeah, the agitator-in-chief. Yeah, that's him.
Isn't that the same guy who convinced A.J. Green to put him in a chokehold that one time?
I thought that was Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, that was Jalen Ramsey.
Okay.
An actually good cornerback, not just a pain in the ass one.
I think that's an underrated skill of a cornerback, though, to be really irritating, make somebody so mad. Like, apparently A.J. Green is like the nicest person ever, and, Andre Johnson's a nice guy. How do you convince that person to, on national television, in a stadium full of people, to choke you by the throat and throw you into the ground and start punching you over and over?
Well, that's the problem, is those guys are so nice that they don't really cut it loose during the game, and it gets built up, and eventually they just lose it. Like if you're out there talking trash and being, a jerk back to the other guy, you're at least letting off a little steam yourself. But if you're just taking it season after season, yeah, I could see where AJ Green would just say, you know what, I'm done with this guy, and just throw his ass on the ground.
I mean, I'm a big fan of cornerback wide receiver rivalries, like the last years. Like these two guys just
me
go
too.
head-to-head all the time.
I generally am on the side of the wide receivers on those rivalries.
I mean, it's sometimes the wide receiver can get out of control, like the Odell, Josh Norman rivalry. I think Odell was a little over the top there, especially that first time they met when Josh Norman was an All-Pro playing with the Panthers.
That might be the only one that I've actually sided with the cornerback on.
Well, because Odell went and after the play launched himself head first into Norman's head. Like that was a really dangerous attack.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just
suspended for that.
He did. He missed the following game against the Vikings, and that was dangerous. Like Andre Johnson beating the crap out of Cortland Finnegan. That's not dangerous. That's just an ass whooping. And getting
one that Finnegan deserved.
Yeah, and getting chokeslammed and thrown on the ground. Yeah, that's humiliating and probably not fun, but you're not at risk of having brain damage from something like that. Whereas what Odell did was just over the top. And then the next time they met up, he ended up fighting a kicking net. So, Odell kind of acted out a little too much and he let it get the better of him, I think. Whereas the other guys, they kept it contained to, I just want to beat you up type of stuff.
Yeah. Hines Ward and Chris McAllister back in the day also hated each other. Like that was intense.
I was never a Hines Ward
just
fan.
Smiling the whole time, making it worse.
I was never a Hines Ward fan. He rubbed me the wrong way.
It reminds me of the opposite situations like Darrelle Revis and Randy Moss, where they wouldn't fight. They would just be awesome and just one-up each other. Or it's like, Darrell took Randy Moss away for a game. Well, next time I'm going to make a one-handed catch on you and just run right by you. The mailbox flag goes up that Randy Moss always did because he's like, first two steps, like, yeah, I cooked you. And then just threw it up. Brady threw it up and just like, yeah, I'm just going to catch it with one hand. Not bring it into my body. Just hold it out there. Just be like, yep, this happened.
Those games were can't miss TV.
Yeah, it was excellent television.
Yeah. Let's see, where are we?
Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson wants out of Houston. Whoops, what just happened? Did I do that? Deshaun Watson wants out of Houston, and I don't blame him in the least bit. They are a clown organization. I mean, they gave away their best receiver for a ham sandwich. No side of fries or anything in return. Their coach was a clown. The GM was also the coach, was also a clown. It's just a mess. Like, it's just Deshaun Watson and a bunch of guys. The aged J.J. Watt is there.
I mean, if you
Watt
saw
was calling people out for not trying or playing hard and stuff.
J.J. Watt called them out. If you guys saw the video as Watt and Watson were walking off the field following their week 17 loss, Watt told him, "I'm sorry that we wasted a year." I mean, this is a year of Watson's prime that he can't get back. And speaking of the guy who beat up Cortland Finnegan, Andre Johnson is among the former Texans players who are backing Deshaun Watson and talking about how much of a joke this organization has been.
Andre Johnson, who hadn't tweeted in years, tweeted this.
Yeah, and some of the background behind this, I mean, is beyond just how crappy the Texans are. It's also what they've pulled since the season ended. I mean, they're in need of filling a head coaching position and a GM spot with the firing of Bill O'Brien. So apparently they hired a search firm, which is bizarre that you would need to do that as a football team to find a GM, but whatever. They hired a search firm to give them some candidates, and they provided two, Omar Khan, who is a talent evaluator for the Steelers, and Louis Riddick, who works on Monday Night Football for ESPN. Both brilliant guys. All three of us think that, Louis Riddick is certainly qualified to be a part of a front office. But so those are the two guys, the names they came up with. They had already made Omar Khan an offer when the Texans decided, we're going to go hire another guy. Mm-hmm. They went and hired Nick Caserio from the Patriots. And I should note that Nick Caserio is white, and that Omar Khan and Louis Riddick are both black. And we also know that the Houston Texans have a history of not bothering with black head coaching candidates or black general managing candidates. And we also know that former owner Bob McNair, who is now deceased, has a history of using some racist dog whistles to refer to players that were kneeling for the national anthem, among other things.
Yep.
This is evidence that, not evidence, we already knew this is true, but this is just put another one in the bucket where having racial biases and racism just makes you mediocre, and you deserve it at that point. It takes a mediocre mind to be racist. And when you have a mediocre mind, you miss things and you miss opportunities and you don't appreciate what's available. And that's really the benefit, frankly, of the Rooney Rule to teams, is that the Rooney Rule forces them to look beyond what they think they know and to evaluate other candidates they might not have otherwise looked at. And it expands their field and ensures that they get the best candidate possible. But if you just say, screw it, I don't care, then you're going to end up like the Houston Texans, which involves your franchise quarterback, who is one of the best in the league, wanting out despite the fact that he's under contract with you and he's in his prime. That's not a good situation at all.
Yeah, this is
That's how the Steelers ended up with Mike Tomlin. Like, they were interviewing a bunch of white guys or whoever, and like, well, let's bring in this Tomlin guy, and he blows them away. And he's been their coach since, 2006, 2007?
I'd say it's worked out pretty well for them hiring Mike Tomlin. He's been fantastic. He's going to the Hall of Fame.
Losing season. They've had 0 losing seasons.
Watson, they've got him under contract, the second largest contract in NFL history. Is it north of 300 or north of 400 million that he's getting on his contract?
It's not that. I mean, that
sounds like Patrick Mahomes.
Well, Patrick Mahomes is 500 million.
Yeah, but
I'm pretty sure Watson was at least 300
Watson
million.
got like 150, 170 or something over a short amount of time.
It's 4 years, 156 million.
Oh,
that's it.
Okay.
So maybe I was thinking
that's still a lot of money.
Yeah, maybe I was thinking the per year average
was
close to because I guess the per year would put him up well over 330. Anyway, regardless, the point is you're paying this guy a buttload of money because you think that he's a great football player, but then they refuse to give him any they don't listen to anything that he says as they're going through this coach search. This is going to be the guy who's going to put talent around your franchise quarterback. This is going to be the guy who coaches your franchise quarterback, right? These are two really important positions, and all Watson wanted was to be a part of the process, to be able to sit in on interviews, to be able to talk to the organization about his impressions of these people who are interviewing, let them know if he thinks that they would be a good coach or if he thinks they'd be a good GM, and then. But he was okay with allowing the organization to have the final word. Mm-hmm. He just wanted to be a part of the process. And instead, he finds out about the offer through social media. They don't even let him know that they've made an offer to a GM or that they've hired a GM. He finds that out from the media.
Well, and the worst part is, like, not only did they not let him be a part of the process, they told him he would be part of the process and then just didn't do that. They lied to him.
Yep.
Which is the ultimate – that's a total slap in the face to a guy when you sit there and you say, hey, we want you in on it, but we're just saying that. We don't actually mean it. We're going to do it our way like always, and it's worked out so well for the Houston Texans so far, right? They got so many trophies, so many playoff wins, and they've won so many division titles, and what a historic franchise the Houston Texans are.
Imagine if they hired Louis Riddick and Eric Bieniemy. They might be a buzzsaw down there.
Yeah.
But
they got so many trophies you can't even count them.
I mean, and the thing is, let's be clear though, there's no guarantee on any head coach,
Oh,
You could hire somebody that you think looks like he's going to be a phenomenal head coach, and he just sucks. I don't think that's
didn't the Saints have Mike Ditka? Right, he was supposed to be great.
Well, Mike Ditka at least had a pedigree of being great.
Yes,
as a coach, he just was a little. Probably had a few screws loose by the time he joined the Saints, but yeah, like Eric Bieniemy looks like a prime candidate, and there's also been a lot of crap about, can he do it? He's got Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes now. Maybe that's why he looks so good. I'm like, no other hot OC got this type of scrutiny.
Right. You don't disqualify these guys because of who they have. Nobody ever disqualified Josh McDaniels because he had Bill Belichick and Tom Brady.
Yeah, they gave him a job in Denver, and he screwed it up. And then he went back to the Patriots.
And they gave him a job in Indianapolis, which he then did a 360 or a 180 on.
Yeah, which he backed out of. And I'm sure even after all that stuff, even after he totally jacked up the Broncos situation by trading away a bunch of picks, they acquired a bunch of picks, so they actually did okay there. But he alienated everybody by getting rid of Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall. He drafted Tim Tebow, which
they traded up.
Yeah, that's right. They traded up. I remember watching on TV that I was sitting there. I was like, "Wow, the Broncos traded up for Tim Tebow." I had to call Nolan because he's a Broncos fan and make fun of him for that, and that's what I did. But then that happened. Then they got caught doing some Spygate-esque type of thing with, filming some type of activity that the 49ers were doing, and that's ultimately what got him fired. And then he goes back to the Patriots, and then he gets hired by the Colts for 5 minutes, and he says, "Nah, I'm good."
Yeah. So yeah, that's a mess. So hopefully Deshaun Watson gets traded to a team that actually cares about him. A team that doesn't suck from ownership on down. And hopefully a team in the NFC also. That would be my preference.
Yeah, you'd rather not have Deshaun Watson playing for a good team in your conference.
Oh my goodness.
He's currently being hidden by the Texans, who, despite Deshaun Watson, can't win any games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, send him to the 49ers.
Oh my goodness, Deshaun Watson with the 49ers. I'd actually like to see that. Him with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk.
And with that defense on the other side.
Oh yeah.
And with Kyle Shanahan.
That's a Super Bowl contender.
Ooh. They were already a Super Bowl contender when they were healthy, and they replaced Jimmy G, who's meh.
That's true.
with a great quarterback. That's
a fun team. I would enjoy that team.
And,
John Lynch should get on the phone.
Move. And they probably don't have to give up a whole lot to get Watson either, because the Texans don't know what they're doing. They're like, yeah, we'll take a square of sod
and CJ Beathard
umbrella, and CJ Beathard, and that's it.
Either him or Nick Mullins.
Yeah.
In fact, maybe the 49ers would be nice and give them both.
Right. Just take Jimmy G too.
2 backups.
Right. 3 backups. You have Jimmy G as well. So yeah, I think that might be the best spot for him. But let's see. Bad beats, Eric. Were there any bad beats this week?
I wrote down Saints Bears not because I don't consider it a bad beat. I just consider it kind of an interesting game where it came down to the Saints were favored by anywhere between 10 and 11.5 points, depending on where you got the line. And the Bears scored a touchdown on the last play of the game as time expired to cut the Saints lead to 12 points. Saints were up 21-3. The Bears scored to make it 21-9. And so if you had the Bears plus 11.5, you might have been thinking, sweet, I might backdoor this thing. But they got rid of the rule to kick extra points or go for 2-point conversions if the time has expired and the game is not in doubt. Like the Saints had won the game, so they're like, yeah, we're not even going to bother kicking the PAT or letting you get a 2-point conversion opportunity. So they just didn't do it, and they just went to the locker room. And so anybody that bet on the Bears, unless you teased it, you lost. Sorry. Sucks for you.
I mean, that's football.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
I don't remember exactly when they got rid of that rule, but I think
it was after the miracle, the
the
Stephon Diggs play.
Yeah,
Because remember, there was a big mess trying to get all the craziness off the field and get the Saints and Vikings out of the locker room to come organize for
Yeah, I
a
mean,
point
and
after.
that wasn't the first time we've seen that sort of thing come up, because we also saw it on the Fail Mary, the Monday night game between the Seahawks and the Packers with the replacement refs, where you had that touchdown, everybody went to the locker room and they couldn't get the Packers to come back out for the extra point.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, now that you mentioned the Minneapolis Miracle, that PAT that the Vikings did not kick. They just sent Case Keenum out there and he took a knee. If they had kicked that PAT, it was significant to some because the Vikings won that game by 5 and they were 5.5-point favorites.
Oh,
So, yeah. Because I remember thinking, because I was watching the game. Corey was actually at my house during that game. I was surprisingly not despondent over that.
I was looking over expecting you to be like livid and
like having a meltdown or something.
You were okay.
I was just kind of like,
Eric having a meltdown? What?
Yeah, it never happens. Nah, not in my DNA. But I remember thinking though, because I was in a pick'em pool where in the playoffs we had to pick against the spread, and I remember thinking, I was like, damn it, now they're gonna kick this PAT and I'm gonna lose this game that way too. And then they did, and I was like, sweet, that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I also, part of it was I didn't think the Saints were gonna beat the Eagles the following week on the road. I just I don't think so. I don't think it's gonna happen. And of course, then the Eagles boat raced the Vikings and went to the Super Bowl, so it didn't hurt me that bad. I'm just tired of seeing the damn highlight. I've seen the highlight enough times. Like, all right, leave me alone. I know it happened. Just shut up. But I can live with that.
Oh, okay. Best and worst of Wild Card Weekend per Football Outsiders. The best quarterback this week was Baker Mayfield. The worst was Russell Wilson.
as I mentioned.
Yeah, as mentioned, Heineke was 6th and Lamar Jackson was 11th out of 14 quarterbacks.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Lamar probably got a pretty big downgrade because the Titans' defense sucks.
Yeah, the Titans' defense is bad, and he threw that brutal interception.
He had the bad pick, and they only scored 20 points. So I mean, you can't expect him to have big numbers, but we know that Lamar's impact is, oftentimes greater than the numbers indicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The running backs, both total and rushing.
Oh no, no, it wasn't out of 14 quarterbacks. It was out of 12. Evan, 6
out of 12.
Yeah, 6 games.
Oh.
Okay. There's 7 teams in the playoffs, but two of them got buys.
That is true.
There you go.
Okay. I was going to say, who was the worst one then? I just said that. The running backs, total and rushing, are both the same for best and worst. Cam Akers was the best this week, going worst to first, and Derrick Henry was the worst, although I don't fully blame him for not being very good. There's only so much he could have done.
Yeah, the numbers don't care about your situation; they care about your production. So,
and when you don't get any first downs, there you go.
Yeah. And the best wide receiver tight end was Stephon Diggs, and the worst was John Brown.
Yep, same team.
Teammates.
Best. We've seen that this year. We saw it at least once, maybe twice with the Packers, where DeVonta Adams was the best, and either Marquise Valdes-Scantling or somebody else was the worst.
And we also had one week where one of the Packers receivers that wasn't DeVonta Adams was the best, and DeVonta Adams was the worst because he had a fumble.
That was Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who was the best that week.
Yeah, I think that was against the Jaguars.
Yeah, that was MVS's huge game of the season.
That was such a weird game. The Packers almost lost.
It was.
What's
up? Oh yeah. Alrighty. So on to our game picks. Are we in the third hour yet, Corey?
No, we're still in the second hour. But before we get to that, do we want to get to our mailbag?
Yes,
because we do actually have one bit of mail from James Daly. He sent us a little note about the Packers. We talked last week about the fact that none of us put the Packers in the playoffs at all.
In the expanded playoffs,
right? Not only did none of us have them as the NFC North champion, which they are, we also didn't have them even as a wild card when we had an extra one to give out. So, we pointed that out on the show last week, but James decided to rub it in just a little bit and I don't blame him.
I asked him to write us this week because James is a Packers fan.
Oh, I did not know that James is a Packers fan. That makes a lot more sense. So, yeah, no, he sent us a really cool mailbag talking about that. A lot of y'alls in there, but he said y'all didn't have a lot of hope for the Packers preseason. I can't remember who y'all picked in the preview podcast, but I don't remember y'all picking the Packers to win the division. I'm not even sure if y'all picked the Packers to even get a wild card spot, which would be crazy considering there were 3 spots. 13-3 last year was a little fluky, and that ended up showing up in the playoffs. 13-3 this year feels completely different. It feels legitimate. The biggest issue last year was the rush defense, and it started out looking like that was going to be the issue midway through this season, but the Packers ended up improving in that area, and by the end of the year, their rush defense wasn't a liability anymore. The matchup with the Rams should be a good matchup on paper. Jalen Ramsey on DeVonta Adams will be fun to watch, but it opens up the deep shot for Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Big Bob Tonyan has wreaked havoc on linebackers. Aaron Jones should have a good game receiving, but he will most likely struggle rushing. A big factor will be how healthy Aaron Donald is. If he's healthy, he can make Aaron get rid of the ball quicker than he'd like, which may mean a game in which he has to throw 10 to 15 checkdowns. The Rams' offense solely depends on the health of Jared Goff. If he's healthy and the Rams can be balanced, they have a much better shot. If he's relying on handing the ball off, it may be a long game for the Rams. Robert Woods is going to have huge numbers if Jared Goff is healthy. The Packers will have a hard time covering him, as in 12 catches for 150 kind of problems. At this point, with the health of Jared Goff, Cooper Kupp, and Aaron Donald in question, I think the Packers will make pretty easy work of the Rams. The weather will be a shock to the warm weather Rams. The only thing that scares me is the fact that the Packers were rolling before the bye week. Byes can disrupt momentum. I have the Packers 37-20.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so thank you, James, for writing in. I think I mean, yeah, like you said, none of us had the Packers in the playoffs. So that's just a bit of an oversight, a bit of a whoopsie on our part.
But yeah, I mean, you know, he said that if the Rams have to rely on Jared Goff handing the ball off, yeah, that's going to be a problem for the Rams. Keep in mind that Cam Akers was the best running back of the week last week, according to Football Outsiders. But James is correct that the Packers' rush defense is not the liability that it was early in the year. It's gotten a lot better, and you know, I would suspect is capable of at least slowing down Cam Akers. So if Goff can't throw the ball, that is going to make things very difficult for the Rams.
Yeah, one of the few losses the Packers had this year was against the Vikings when they let Dalvin Cook run all over them. And so Corey and I both thought that we might see something similar when the Packers played the Titans with Derrick Henry a couple weeks ago, and they completely shut him down.
Yep.
So, you could see just a couple of data points there against stud running backs, 2 of the best in the league. And you could even go back to like week 2 or 3 when they played the Saints, and Alvin Kamara cooked them too. Although he did most of his damage in the passing game, but still, it's still a running back that you got to defend. And so that steady improvement portends good things, especially against the Rams, who really need a good running game because of the limitations that Goff seems to have right now due to his injuries. The one worry point I had for them, though, is we kind of saw that the Rams still have the ability to get after the quarterback, even with Aaron Donald being not in the game. And so he's going to be on the field, maybe limited, but the Packers' offensive line has been great, but David Bakhtiari, their all-pro left tackle, is out.
Yeah.
So there's going to be opportunities for the Rams pass rush to get home. It's just a matter of, can the Rams score points enough and maybe get a great defensive performance? I think it's just too much to ask for all parties involved, because Rodgers can torch any defense regardless of how good, and the Rams I just don't see them being able to muster the offense.
Aaron Rodgers is about as good this season as he's been at any point in his career. I mean, this year has been phenomenal for him. And, you know, he's seeing so much of the field. He's got some really good receivers. DeVonta Adams is, you know, he has put himself in that conversation for, you know, best in the league. I don't know if I wouldn't put him as the best, but he's earned, you know, the right to be a part of that conversation. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a burner. He's a pretty decent route runner. Alan Lazard is a really good route runner, and he's got good hands. You've got two really good backs out of the backfield who can catch passes, in Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. So Aaron can go to whoever he needs to. If they've got a couple of quick routes, he's got the guys who he can get the ball out of his hands quickly if the rush is coming at him. That doesn't mean that they're not going to get home and take him down, because he does still take some sacks. That is something that Aaron Rodgers will do when he's looking for the deep shot. But if he's willing to check the ball down, he's got guys who can make plays on those checkdowns, right? James mentioned in that mailbag that if Aaron Donald and the Rams defense can get home, it's going to lead to 12 to 15 checkdowns. Well, he's got two of the best checkdown running backs in the league. They can get yards after the reception. This is not Ronald Jones catching balls, 2 or 3 yards downfield and then not getting any yards after the catch.
It's also not Derrick Henry, who's just useless in the passing game for some reason. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
But who, for some reason, was actually kind of involved in the passing game this past week. It's weird.
Well, you gotta try something, I guess. Yeah. And the thing you mentioned, Corey, about Rodgers being like, this is maybe the best we've seen him. He's different. Like, this is different than what he did in 2011, where he was just kind of, had all these receivers that just ran down the field and he just threw lasers on play action passes. He's playing a more cerebral game than we're used to seeing.
He really is.
Like, some of what kind of held him back a little bit in the more recent years, as the weapons that he had kind of declined. They still weren't bad. They were still pretty damn good. But he didn't have 3 or 4 excellent ones like he did like in that 2011 season. Was that he loved to play outside of structure. But playing outside of structure requires the receivers to get open consistently. And Rodgers would be in that situation where he basically aborted the play on his own and was waiting for the Jordy Nelson style, I just cooked the guy down the field for a 60-yard touchdown. And that never came, so he had to throw the ball away all the time. This year he seems very trusting of the offense he's in with the second year under Matt LaFleur, something that last year we kind of figured it would be a little shaky, and it was. And the last couple of years of McCarthy were very shaky, and we've seen reason to believe that was more on McCarthy than Aaron at this point. But now he seems like he's locked into what LaFleur is doing. He's on the same page with his head coach for the first time in a long time, and that's created this older but maybe better version of Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I mean, on this game, I agree with you guys. I mean, I don't see the Rams winning. I don't think they can hang offensively with the Packers. So we 12 and 8 points.
They used to be able to, but not anymore.
No.
Yeah. Checking my phone right quick. Jared Goff practiced in full today. Wolford didn't practice. Cooper Kupp missed practice. Let's see. Arthur Smith is front runner for the Falcons. Marcus Peters, Matthew Judon missed practice. Wizards, Pistons, and Warriors, Suns postponed because of health and safety protocols. So anybody listening to this probably already knows that. Podcasting is a bit like time travel, right? Like we're recording in the present, but nobody's listening in the present.
Well,
so
we might have a couple listeners.
Oh, okay. Do you have anything else on the Rams and the Packers? I mean, I checked the weather. That's something else. 34 with snow showers at 30% on Saturday. So we'll see what happens.
Sweet.
Ravens at Bills. Corey's got 8 points on the Bills. Eric's got 4 points on the Bills. I have 16 points on the Bills.
I have to assume that this is something where last week you picked against Baltimore and they ended up winning, so now you're going to pick against them as strongly as you can to ensure that they win?
I mean, not quite that, but, this is more emotional hedging from me.
This is like next level emotional hedging.
Well, it is the next level of the playoffs, yeah. So, yeah, this is completely what's going on. And, I need to make sort of out-of-the-box picks to try to catch up, because I believe I'm still in last place. So, picking a team that's favored at home who's playing against a good team, but, just putting way too many points on them. I mean, it's hard to see this backfiring, but it probably will. So I put 16. The Bills are really good. Their offense was humming. They benched half their team against the Dolphins in Week 17 and still put 50 points on them against the Dolphins team that was trying, because all they needed to do was win, and they would be in the playoffs instead of Indy. So Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs lightened it up. The Bills' defense has been coming on of late. So the Bills are favored, and appropriately favored.
For most of this season, I've been picking with my gut, and this week I kind of went away from my gut because my gut was saying Baltimore. As I thought a little bit more about the game and the matchups and the fact that Lamar Jackson really didn't play all that great last week. He had that one really amazing run. He had a few nice plays in the second half, but for a lot of the game, he didn't play well. And the Bills are they're humming. The Ravens defense, I think, is capable of somewhat limiting the Bills offense, but Stephon Diggs is next level right now. Josh Allen is unconscious right now. The Bills defense is plenty good to contain the Ravens offense as well, especially with the receivers not being that good. They'll have their hands full with Lamar, no doubt, because he's so freakishly athletic, but the Bills will be able to slow down the run game and slow down the receivers. The Bills have that defensive capability. So I ended up kind of switching back over to the Bills, but I can't go all in on them because the Ravens are massively talented. They've been hot lately. They could have easily, blown the game against a Titans team that had been heating up over the past month. Their run game was great. Tannehill had been playing great again after a midseason lull in his performances. A.J. Brown has been fantastic. A.J. Brown had an incredible first drive of that game on Saturday or Sunday, and then disappeared. Nowhere to be found until sometime in the fourth quarter. So the Ravens are it's not outside the question that the Ravens could slow down Stephon Diggs. But it's going to be really tough. So I have to give the edge to the Bills. But this is not going to be a cakewalk for them. This is going to be a very competitive game. Every bit as competitive as any of the other games this weekend could be. I would say that the only other game this weekend that might be as competitive is Bucs-Saints.
Yeah, I was really thinking about picking the Ravens to win this game. Ultimately, I thought better of it and decided to go with the hometown Bills. But I think that the Ravens have the ability to exploit one of the Bills. I don't want to call it a weakness because it's not really a weakness, but one of their
strengths.
One of their less strong strengths.
Yeah, like one of their mediocrities, if you will, is their run defense, which has not been overwhelmingly great. It's been kind of middle of the pack this year in terms of DVOA. And the Ravens are a great run offense. They're the third best run offense by DVOA in the league. That's clearly their identity. That's what they like to do. So there is an angle to exploit there for them. But, man, the Bills are just playing some really good football, and they're at home. There will be some fans there again like there were last week. I think that they're a little bit of a wagon right now, and I don't want to go against that. I feel like that's dangerous to try to start getting cute and picking against the team that is rolling. And it's not like this is a team that's been sitting at home for a week. We haven't seen in a while. We're wondering, rest versus rust, that type of crap. They played last week, and they got their own playoff monkey off their back, if you will, last week. So if you want to play the narrative game, Josh Allen got his first playoff win, and that's the first Bills playoff win since 1995. So, this is part of the story too. I mean, nobody was criticizing Josh Allen for not winning a playoff game, even though he had lost one in pretty humiliating fashion in a very winnable game against the Texans last year. But that's where we are with these stupid narratives. So
Yeah, I'm going to be really intrigued with that matchup that you just mentioned, Eric, of the Ravens' rush offense against the Bills' run defense, because you look at last week against the Colts, right? Jonathan Taylor was not particularly effective. He had less than 4 yards per carry, but he ran for 78 yards. Naeem Hines ran for 75 yards on 6 carries in that game. So the Colts' rush offense was solid. Not terrific, but pretty solid. The Bills were able to withstand that and still win the game narrowly. What the Colts don't have that the Ravens do have is a running quarterback. Phillip Rivers can't run at all. And Lamar Jackson, while he's perfectly happy to throw the ball as well, he's not a rush-only quarterback. That's his biggest strength, is his ability to run the football. That's going to be an element to this game that's going to be a lot more difficult for the Bills to defend. It's also going to make it more difficult for them to defend guys like J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, which could potentially flip the script. I mean, it's only 3 points that the Colts lost by. Maybe that is the difference that allows the Ravens to flip that and win this game.
I saw something out of Lamar this past week. Like, as on that touchdown run, as he got into the second level, I'd never seen him hit that next gear before. Like, the acceleration as he was sort of juking out one of the safeties was just insane.
I saw that on a few of his runs last year, but yeah, I mean, it's a remarkable amount of athleticism that he has.
I mean, it's unreal. I think we have to be careful not to, get used to this, right? Like, if we oh well, it's just Lamar. He's just making professional tacklers just miss him and make them look silly, just regularly. Oh well, like Manny Machado diving into the dugout and flipping the ball across the diamond. It's like, oh well, that's just what happens. Like, no, this is incredible.
Oh, I that's never happened for me though. I mean, I still marvel at the plays that Aaron Rodgers makes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Patrick Mahomes makes. I mean, he's only been around for a couple of years, but it's the same idea. You never get tired of watching stuff like that. Even basketball, you don't get tired of watching LeBron or Steph Curry or Russell Westbrook do incredible things.
I never got tired of watching Peyton Manning do incredible things. We don't really get tired of watching Tom Brady do incredible things. We don't get tired of Drew Brees.
Well, Evan's sick of Tom Brady, but that's cool. But yeah, I'm excited for this game. I think this is the best game of the weekend, because this is going to matter a lot. Because I think both of these teams could win the Super Bowl, and one of them's going home.
Yeah. How do you think? I mean, you think either of these teams has a chance in Kansas City? Like, I feel like in Kansas City. I don't know about that.
Yeah,
I think the Bills could go there and win for sure.
Yeah, either one of them has a chance. The Bills more so, I think. But
I think the Chiefs are a bad matchup for the Ravens, like just on paper. So it might be tougher for them.
Yeah.
But the Bills, absolutely, I think, with the way they're playing right now, and with kind of what we've seen from the Chiefs, the last month and a half of the season, where their offense looked a little less than stellar, Mm-hmm. So then the Bills' defense, which does very well against the pass, like we'd said, the run defense is sort of their weakness if they have one.
But the Chiefs' run game isn't that.
The Chiefs don't really run the ball like that. So, they can get after Patrick Mahomes and make life a little more difficult for him. And they played earlier in the season, and they did an okay job of containing the Chiefs' offense. It's just that was when Josh Allen was kind of in his midseason slump where he wasn't playing that well. And he ain't there anymore. He's back to being, whatever the hell he is, which is really good right now.
All right, so let's transition to Sunday. Sunday, this game's at 3:00, not 1:00. So
this is typical for divisional round and championship conference championship weekend Sundays.
I don't think it's typical for divisional round, but it's definitely for championship Sunday.
Yeah, championship Sunday is usually 3:00.
But anyway, so extra 2 hours of sleep or grocery shopping or laundry or whatever.
Or 2 hours less of sleep after the games, depending on how you look at it. Granted, at least we got a holiday on Monday.
I don't have a holiday on Monday.
That is messed up, but you do live in the South.
I won't comment further. Yeah, I think it speaks for itself. So anyway, Browns at Chiefs. We all got the Chiefs big. Eric and Corey have 16 points. I put 12 because I put my 16 on the Bills. I think this game is going to be closer than people think. I think the Browns are going to, I don't think this is going to be, let's turn it off and play Call of Duty type of game. I don't think Chiefs roll by 50. Even though our confidence points sort of indicate that. I think the other 3 games this week are all going to be close. But this game, I mean, it seems like the Chiefs should win by 3 scores. But like Eric just said, I think, they haven't been looking great the last month or so. They didn't play at all last week. They sat after team the week before against the Chargers. They tried as hard as they could to lose against the Falcons the week before that, but the Falcons are the best at losing. So, they managed to squeeze by a terrible Falcons team. So the Chiefs, they seem like the type of team that, they just got kind of bored, I guess, and they're just going to turn it on when they feel like it matters. But that's really hard to do. So I'm fading the Chiefs just a little bit. They should win, but they just haven't. I mean, we haven't really seen them the past 3 weeks, and then when they were playing at their fullest, they didn't look so great.
It's interesting here because part of me wishes I had gone 16 on the Packers, 12 on this game, just because I do agree with you. I think that this game will be somewhat close. I think it's going to be competitive. You look at the Chiefs. They are the 2nd worst rush defense in the league by DVOA, and they're going up against Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. If the Browns run the ball like they should, they're going to have some success on offense. They're going to sustain some drives. Baker Mayfield has been terrific, and a part of that is because of how good the run game has been. If they can keep that going, I fully expect the Browns to be in this. The only reason that I went the way that I did is because Cleveland's defense has not been very good this year. Right now, they rank 25th in DVOA, whereas the Rams' defense has been very good, especially over the second half of the season. Right now, I mean, they're 4th on the year by DVOA, and they've only gotten better of late. So I think that the Rams defense has a better chance of keeping them in the game against the Packers and giving them an outside chance of squeaking by than I think the Browns defense gives their team against a really good Chiefs offense. But I agree. I don't think that this is going to be a cakewalk for Kansas City.
What's the line on this game, Eric? Isn't it Chiefs -10 or something?
Yeah, last I saw was Chiefs -10. So
I would take the Bills against the spread, or the Browns against the spread.
Yeah,
so would I.
I would probably take the points too.
With a fair amount of confidence.
This game resembles, to me, a little bit of the 2011 postseason when the 15-1 Packers with MVP Aaron Rodgers were hosting the 9-7 Giants.
Do we have to keep bringing up the 2011 postseason? Jeez.
I'm not talking
a
about
lot happened in that postseason.
It was a wild playoff. So the Packers were heavily favored, coming off a bye, had sat their starters in week 17 against the Lions, and the Giants came in and they beat the crap out of the Packers. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it does have that vibe that kind of keeps that in the back of my mind that this could go the other way. And also the Browns have shown a penchant for scoring a ton of points. Just randomly big numbers, 45 points, boom, against the Steelers. They scored 42 against Baltimore in that wild Monday Night Football game a few weeks back. Last year against the Ravens, early in the season, they boat raced them, and the Browns weren't even good.
Yeah, that Browns team was awful.
And the thing there is, some people might discredit that argument because, how did the Browns come by so many points last week? Well, Ben was terrible, and the first 7 points came off of a terrible snap, and a lot of the other points came off of all those interceptions that Ben was throwing. There's no way that could possibly happen with Kansas City. Well, Patrick Mahomes has been throwing quite a lot of not just interceptions, but also interceptable balls over the past month and change. So as bad as the Browns defense is, that doesn't mean they still came across a lot of turnovers against the Steelers. There's no reason why that isn't possible against the Chiefs.
Well, and the thing is, the point totals were big, but the Browns' offense was still really good against the Steelers.
Oh, sure, yeah. But if it wasn't for those turnovers, they're not going to score that many points.
Sure, of course not. But they also are going up against a significantly worse defense against the Chiefs than they were against the Steelers. And they could easily, I don't care how good the Chiefs' offense is. If you tell me there's a possibility that their opponent could score 40 on them, which I think is a possibility for the Browns to do, you can't tell me they're definitely going to win the game, because scoring 40 is a lot. And the thing about the Browns is, their defense hasn't performed all that great. They've had a lot of injuries, but, man, they got a lot of talent. They've got Myles Garrett, who's one of the best players in the league. We had him as an All-Pro. I think he made the All-Pro team. Denzel Ward, I don't know if he's healthy, but when he's healthy, he's a lockdown corner. They have the ability to make things happen on an individual level. And in a game that could turn into a shootout, a defensive play from an elite player could turn it. And that's all I'm saying. I don't have confidence that the Browns are going to win just because I think the Chiefs are more consistent offensively, but I wouldn't sleep on Cleveland at all.
Yeah, I would worry that the Chiefs might be sleeping on Cleveland a little bit.
Well, the Chiefs have been sleeping for 2 months.
The Steelers certainly were sleeping on Cleveland. I don't know how that's even possible to be sleeping on a team in your own division.
Yeah, and that's another thing is, like,
Steelers running their mouths sleeping on Cleveland.
And we talked about how the Browns barely beat the Steelers in Week 17 to play their way in. But it just goes to show that no two football games are the same. Like, you can run it back and put better players out there for the Steelers, and you'd say, oh, well, they only lost by 2 last time, so you're figuring it's going to win. It's like, dude, it's 10 to 12 possessions for each team. A lot can happen that's different. And in this situation, you had 4 interceptions thrown by your quarterback, plus a ball gets snapped over his head that got returned for a touchdown. So, crazy things happen.
Returned for a touchdown.
Yeah, or recovered in the end zone, basically. Not much of a return needed.
Belly flop for a touchdown.
But that stuff happens all the time when we see games like rematches just a few weeks apart or whatever. And that happens in games where we don't expect it. Like, we say, oh, well, the Chiefs should win on paper. It's like, it's a football game. It's an oblong ball, and you've only got 12 chances to march 100 yards potentially to score points. A lot can happen that goes off script.
Yeah. On to the final game, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, New Orleans Saints. This is the only game this weekend where, we don't all have the same team winning. So Eric and I have the Saints with 8 and 4 points. Corey's got 4 points on the Buccaneers.
They're my Buccaneers again.
He's finally returned to the flux after the whole season of being a hater.
Come back to your team.
This game I did go with my gut, because a lot of the evidence would suggest that the Saints should win this game. But I also know, how many times do all of the higher seeds win in divisional weekend? It almost never happens. Doesn't never happen, but it almost never happens. Something's got to give, I feel like. And the game that I felt was the most likely to flip is the Buccaneers. I think that this is 2 pretty evenly matched teams. These are 2 division opponents. Remind me, did the Saints win both regular season matchups, Eric?
Yeah, they
both
crushed
absolute
them.
beatdowns.
Both times.
It is almost impossible to beat a team 3 times in a season. Even after crushing them both times, that doesn't mean that the Saints are going to crush them again or even beat them again. The Bucs have been playing really good football lately. Their defense is getting some of their crap back together. The offense has looked really good. Antonio Brown is now relevant, which means that you've got 3 terrific wide receivers plus a couple of really good tight ends. I mean, Cameron Brate got involved against Washington this past week, and we hadn't heard anything from him all season, essentially. I just can't help but think that the Saints are going to be in a little bit of trouble. Certainly, I don't have a lot of confidence. I put the least points on this game, and that's after. I mean, I told you I was leaning Ravens, and then I flipped to the Bills and ended up putting 8 points on the Bills because this game has me that nervous. I went from 8 points on the Ravens to 8 points on the Bills because there's no way that I can put more than 4 points on either team in this game. It's just that tight of a matchup.
I agree with you, Corey. I think this is going to be a really tight game. Talking about vengeance earlier, I mean, the Buccaneers just get annihilated twice on national TV against the Saints. I don't see that happening a third time. And the Saints they seem like they can be had. Just, something is going to happen. I sense misfortune for them this week, unfortunately. But I think it's going to be a real close game. I think it's going to be a really good game. I don't think it's going to be an annihilation this time. Either one of these teams, frankly, could represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. This is. I don't even know. I picked the Saints, but all week I was saying, let me go Buccaneers just to be kind of contrary. But I'm like, you know what? The Saints are at home. The Saints are definitely better than Tampa Bay. But
this was not just to be clear, this was not a case where you saw that I was picking the Buccaneers and decided to go Saints just because you need to catch up in points.
No.
Okay.
I was thinking Buccaneers.
Fair enough. Just
gone all week, and I'm like, I don't know if I can count on them either. So, Saints for me in a squeaker. So yeah, Eric, be sure to have your your inhaler or relaxation tape handy for the post game.
I mean, at this point, I'm so used to playoff misery that it doesn't really even hurt anymore. After what happened in 2018 with the pass interference that wasn't, it is what it is, man. Like I feel like the Saints had their chance to win a Super Bowl. Misfortune and other things got in the way. And so at this point, the fact that we're even here, I consider kind of gravy. I mean, I thought that with the way Drew looked to start the season, I figured this isn't going to go well. But he's managed through his age, and he played a decent game against the Bears. And, I frankly, I couldn't care less about what happened in the first 2 games of the season. I don't expect the Saints to blow them out because I didn't expect them to blow them out the second time either. Both were, the first one didn't surprise me. The first game in the Superdome, it didn't surprise me that the Saints took it to the Bucs because the Saints
were
a whole
new team,
and no real training camp or preseason, whereas the Saints were a program at that point. But by week whatever, when they met up the second time, the Bucs looked like they had figured things out, and I was like, oh no, this is gonna be bad for the Saints. And somehow it wasn't. It was the total opposite. But the reason why I picked the Saints was because I think their defense is better than the Bucs. I think the Bucs defense can be had a little bit, especially through the air. They're going to have a hard time guarding Michael Thomas. I mean, he's healthy. He's playing. We also know that the Bucs' number 1 receiver gets a 3rd visit from his dad. It's the first time ever he gets a 3rd visit from Marshawn Lattimore, but his dad will be in town nonetheless, and he'll spend it chilling with him instead of catching passes. So there's that. Also, I don't really buy the whole it's hard to beat the team 3 times because history dictates otherwise. This has happened before in the NFL, and 2 out of 3 times the team that swept the regular season matchup wins the playoff matchup. It's not some unusual circumstance. In fact, it's kind of the norm in these situations, but that doesn't mean I'm not scared as hell of the Bucs. The Bucs are really good, and Brady looked great. And what really scares me about them is the fact that we kind of talked about last week where we figured the Bucs would win against the team because their defense would shut down Washington and Brady would do just enough. And that's not really what happened. The Bucs struggled to contain Taylor Heineke and the Redskins offense. Put $1 in the jar there. the team, the football team, but yet Tom Brady.
On purpose?
I didn't do it on purpose. No.
You had a very quick reaction with the put a dollar in the jar, like you knew it as you were saying it.
Well, that's just because as soon as I said it, it's like, ooh. But anyway, thank you for derailing my point. But Tom Brady
derailed your own point.
Well, you guys had to say something. I was.
You're the one who said something. You referred to the team as their previous racial slur nickname.
Which, it happens. It's happened. Scott Van Pelt did it. I heard Tony Kornheiser did it this week too. So he had a similar reaction to me. But anyway, Tom Brady lit them up. Like they didn't get any pressure on him. Chase Young got like one pressure on Tom Brady the entire game. And that was a bit of a surprise because we'd seen the Bucs historically this season struggle to contain good pass rushers, and that didn't seem to affect them. And Brady had, I think, the second best game by DVOA. He could have had the best game if it wasn't for Chris Godwin not catching the football. So, I mean, that offense looks like they're ready to handle what the Saints are going to bring, which worries the hell out of me because that was something that seemed like it was a reliable win for the Saints would be their defense being able to rattle Tom Brady a little bit, and then the offense would be able to get after their defense and score enough points. I don't know that that's the case. So
because the Saints always have to lose in just historically heartbreaking fashion in the playoffs.
That's not true.
The last two have each, one-upped the previous one.
I won't say one-upped. Last year was not nearly as bad as the previous year.
That's true. Yeah, last year wasn't that bad. Anyway, I have a super specific prediction for the end of the game that there's no way in hell that this will happen. But if it does, I'll be working on NFL Network next year as an analyst for making the prediction. So here is my super specific prediction for the end of the game. 4th down and 1. It is the Saints are down by 4 points, but they've got the ball in the red zone. Drew Brees in the shotgun. Ndamukong Suh comes across the line of scrimmage before the snap. It does not get called as offsides. He gets the sack. The Bucs win the game, and there will be a picture from the side view along the line of scrimmage of Ndamukong Suh's helmet coming out of one of the linemen's asses while the ball still has not moved from the pre-snap position.
I have a lot of questions. First of all, what the hell does this have to do with you working for the NFL Network if you're right about this?
Because that would be an amazing prediction to get right.
Okay, so you don't actually have something lined up. You're just talking smack.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then I'm not as interested anymore.
It's purely because of the ridiculousn's of the prediction. If I get it right, somebody's got to offer me a job.
That far offsides and it not be called? If he's
because it's the Saints. Because it's the Saints. What happened? What happened against the Rams? How did that not get called?
How did that guy get away with that pass interference? These things happen apparently. So, but I don't see that happening. That's a pretty big boo boo to miss an offsides that egregious where apparently his head would be beyond an offensive lineman's tail end. But hopefully that doesn't happen.
Suh's a little man, and you just
you can't really.
Oh yeah,
miss
no.
him.
So it's really more of an encroachment that's not called.
Yeah,
it sounds like uninvited to the quarterback that's not called.
Yeah. All right. Well, if that happens, I'm never doing a podcast with you again, Corey. So you can put that down. I don't think it's going to come to that. I think this doesn't feel like the heartbreak game to me. Like it feels like the heartbreak game usually happens when when the Saints are playing a team that I either don't like or I don't really care about. Whereas the Bucs, I kind of like the Bucs.
Do you have a list of teams that you hate?
I don't really like the Rams at all.
You hate the Falcons.
I hate the Falcons, but they're too stupid. They got their own problems. They can't possibly break my heart. They make me happy.
Pretty sure you hate the Eagles.
I mean, I hate most of the NFC East teams. I hate the Eagles. I hate the Giants. What's the other teams that I hate? I hate the Rams. Like I can't stand the Rams. I don't like the Packers. I think their fans are annoying. we're kind of going off on a rails
Yeah, we
here
are.
about teams I hate, but I'll keep going if you insist. I hate the Texans for reasons we previously discussed. I hate the Jets because they're the Jets, and I hate dysfunctional, stupid franchises.
There's
I hate
nothing
the
Eric hates
Lions.
more than dysfunctional stupidity.
Yeah, and the Lions are part of that group too. Yeah, that might be it as far as teams I absolutely abhor.
That's
if you
almost
will.
the rest of the NFC and only a couple of AFC teams mixed in.
I left out a lot of teams, man. Like I don't hate the Panthers. I don't hate the Bucks. I don't hate the team. I don't hate the Cowboys. I
How do you
don't.
feel about the Chargers?
Chargers are fine. You
Yeah.
know, they're stupid, but I enjoy their stupidity. Their uniforms are great. The powder blues are wonderful.
I do.
So they
I do
got
love their
that.
uniforms.
Yeah,
They got
I
that
hate
going for them.
the Cowboys, Steelers, Patriots, Falcons, Jets, Titans. Just those are my 6.
I hate the Eagles. That's it.
Just the Eagles.
Yep.
Eagles and Giants are just they both drive me nuts. But most of that with the Giants is recently with the stupidity of their team, and then their fans insisting that Dave Gettleman's secretly a genius. I'm like, no, he's not.
Well, he's keeping the secret from everybody.
Oh, there's plenty of other teams whose fans I hate, but the only team that I have that strong of a feeling for are the Eagles.
Oh. I put my hate list together sometimes because of their fans.
The fans are a big factor a lot of times for me.
Like Falcons fans are awful. They don't even watch the Falcons. Like I can't blame them, frankly.
Yeah, I get it.
But
The Ravens are on that list for me.
Oh, I can't really blame you on that either. To be perfectly honest.
I mean, I just remember like the Ravens and Steelers whenever they play each other, like it's a nonstop whine fest about the officiating. Like both parties think the refs are out to screw them all the time, and like the Ravens, I get it because the NFL has historically been unkind to the Ravens. The Steelers, I don't. Like you're NFL royalty. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Like the refs gave you a Super Bowl in Super Bowl 40 against the Seahawks, so maybe just chill with the whining about the officials.
Oh yeah. Alrighty. So before we wrap up, any shout outs or anything? Have there been any Woj bombs in our 2+ hours?
I don't think so. I think everything's fine. Oh, hockey season starts if y'all are into that type of thing, which you guys
Sure,
aren't.
it
But
does.
tomorrow, hockey's back.
Sure
I thought it was today.
Well,
Wednesday.
the Caps are back tomorrow, and that's what I care about. So
Okay. Are the Caps gonna ice the team they play, or frost them, or polarize them, or anything like that?
I don't think people use that type of terminology.
Because they
But,
polarize them.
Yeah.
God.
they're going to usually an ass whooping is referred to as a whitewashing in hockey.
Oh. Okay.
I don't think I have any shout outs for this week.
I don't think I have any either. So yeah, I think that'll do it for this week's show. Are we under 2.5 hours? Did we make it?
We
Under
are
2.5.
just under 2.5 right now.
Oh, okay. So more rambling. Thank you very much to James for emailing us this week. We still need to hear from Sean and Andrew. What are y'all doing? Y'all know we record on Wednesday at 6, so get your mailbag questions and picks in. Did one of us respond to James about how the confidence points would be?
I just
handed out?
adjusted it.
Okay.
I mean, he has them in order. I just put the correct numbers with it.
Okay. Well, James, if you want to make changes, because I think he put 16, 11, 6, and 1
Yeah.
instead of 16, 12, 8, and 4.
Yeah.
So if you want us to change that, let us know.
Well, I mean, I'm just gonna go with the order that he put from most to least.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. That's what I would have done. Let's see. So you can send us an email, thesportsballers@gmail.com. Particularly Sean and Andrew should send us an email, thesportsballers@gmail.com. Waiting to hear from you. You can find this podcast wherever you're listening to it right now. In addition, you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts. You can follow our show on Twitter at SportsBallers18. You can follow Corey on Twitter at Corey Puffett. You can follow Eric on Twitter at Quagmire67. And you follow me on Twitter at Evan_Ash13. If you've made it this far in the show, please, please, please subscribe. You're obviously interested in what we have to say. So you'll be the first to know when we post a new episode if you're subscribed. Feel free to reach out to us and give us feedback. If you think we're good, if you think we're terrible, if you have any questions, concerns, or snide remarks. Let's see. Wear a mask. Wash your hands and bathe. Be kind. Tell the people you love that you love them.
And get vaccinated when you can, even if it doesn't automatically prevent transmissibility.
Yeah, don't be a fool. People act like we don't know what's in the vaccine. Well, we don't know what's in a Tylenol or a Big Mac either. People eat those. I guess you don't eat Tylenol, but ingest it. So with that, let's get out of here. So for Corey, for Eric, I'm Evan. This has been the Sportsballers Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.